The mud on the East Coast Road was the kind that doubles the weight of your boots every 100 steps. I had been dragging myself through it since dawn, and my boots now weighed roughly as much as my future. Then the axle cracked. The whole convoy stopped. 120 people, 10 carts, 10 soldiers in leather armor, and one white magic tower crest painted on the side of my carriage that was supposed to mean something out here, and absolutely did not. Arthur came trudging back through the muck, my butler, old, gray, and personally offended by the entire province. "My lord, 2 hours to repair. Sweetwater Town is close. If we push on, we make it in time for lunch with Baron Bromley." Lunch. In my head, a blue panel unfolded itself in the air, polite as a waiter. Choose to leave. Misfortune, level 5. Choose to stay. Good fortune, level 4. I had been in this body for exactly 9 days, and I had already learned what Misfortune 5 meant. Misfortune 5 is not a bad afternoon. Misfortune 5 is 100% mortality. Everyone here. Me, Arthur, the soldiers, the carters, the horses, the crest. "Don't rush to get going," I said. "Let's fix the truck first." Arthur blinked. Baron Bromley was the only nobleman within 80 kilometers who would have fed us. I told him the axle looked worse than it was. He gave me the look old servants give young masters who have started making decisions, and he went to find the tools. I spent those 2 hours doing arithmetic on myself, because I had not had a quiet moment since I woke up in this body, and I badly needed one. Here is what I had. I had 108 coins of a currency nobody else on this continent can see. I had a staff of fire dragon wood that my father gave me when I was 6, 3 fireballs a day, and a body that got winded carrying its own coat. I had a butler who thought I was a disappointment, a knight who thought I was a duty, and 118 other people who thought I was a wage. I had 2,300 subjects I had never met, in a village I had never seen, on a coast the Empire uses as a place to put its spare sons. And I had every single thing I learned in 11 years of taking this world apart from the outside, sitting in my head, complete, indexed, and worth precisely nothing until I found somebody willing to dig a ditch for me. And I had a hole punched straight through my soul. Somebody put it there when I was 6 years old, inside my own family's guarded magic tower, and it welded me shut at level 1 arcanist for life. Then somebody shipped me out to a swamp coast to be a pioneer lord. Then, 9 days ago, somebody poisoned the boy whose body I am wearing and left a note in his handwriting saying he had done it to himself. 3 somebodies, or 1 somebody 3 times. I do not know yet. I would like to meet them. I have some questions and a fireball. What I did not know, sitting in that mud, is that the hole in me was not damage. It was a door. 2 hours later, we rolled towards Sweetwater Town, and the town roared at us. That is the only way I can describe it. There was no warning, no smoke, no screaming, and then something 18 meters long came up out of the middle of the settlement like a bad thought surfacing. Black scales, wings that put half the road in shadow. It roared once, looked at nothing in particular, and dove back down. A gray mist came rolling out over the fields behind it. Arthur's hands were shaking on the reins. Sweetwater Town. It's over. So that was Misfortune 5. Lunch. I did not have time to enjoy being right. "Drop the cargo," I said. "Wet cloth over your mouth and nose. High ground, now, everyone moves." Nobody moved. 120 people stood in the mud and looked at a boy of 18. Arthur solved it by slapping Elder Silas on the back of the head, and Elder Silas, who was a teamster and a cook and about 60 years of bad decisions in one body, started bellowing. Eleanor drew her longsword and cut a bolt of linen into strips faster than I could count them. When the crowd surged, she put the blade up flat and stopped it, and Arthur's voice went over the top of everyone. "Come in line. Anyone who dares to push will have their legs broken." We got up the slope. Below us, the mist rolled through the grass, and the grass went yellow and lay down. The horses screamed. My chest was burning from 100 meters of running uphill, which told me everything about the body I had inherited. Strengthening it was going on to the agenda, right under not dying. Since I have 400 meters of mud to get through, let me finish the introduction. My name is Julian Thorne, and I am the second son of a legendary arcanist. Spell tricks at 2, level 1 arcanist at 6, which, for about 4 months, put me in the same sentence as a boy called Lysander, and if that name means nothing to you yet, give it time. Everybody in this story learns it eventually. Then the tower and the hole, and a family that had been extremely proud of me discovering that it had other children. A man whose name I never got promised he could heal it. He is the one who sent me out here. Then he walked out of my life and has not been seen since, which I have decided is a fact and not a coincidence. And the boy who actually owned this body died on his second night in Bay Village, thinking that the tea tasted strange. I have all of his memories. That is how I know the handwriting on that note was not his. Who I was is a longer story, and I will keep it short. I played this world. All of it. In another life, I was a level 39 Grand Arcanist with a magic kingdom and a guild, and I died the way you want to die, taking 3 gods down the stairs with me. A death god, an evil god, and a goddess of luck named Seraphina. Remember her, she is going to matter. We lost 3 carts and about 400 gold of trade goods on that slope, and I made the call to leave them in 11 seconds, and Arthur did not question it once, which is when I learned what I actually had in Arthur. He questioned it afterward, in writing, at length. That is also what I have in Arthur. The mist took 20 minutes to thin out, and we spent all 20 of them lying on wet grass watching a town we had been planning to eat lunch in stop existing. Here is the thing I could not say to anybody on that hillside. I had seen that dragon before, not this one, the event. In my old life, this was a scripted regional incident. An 18-meter adult black dragon raises a settlement on the East Coast in the second week of March, year 129. About 400 players farmed those ruins for a fortnight afterward for the drops. I remembered the drop table. I did not remember the name of the town. Nobody in the game ever learned the name of the town, because the town was scenery. Arthur knew the name. He knew the baker. He said out loud, twice, without noticing he was doing it, that Baron Bromley's youngest had just been born. That is the difference between the 2 lives. And it arrived on day 9, and I have not put it down since. While I was standing on that hill congratulating myself on being alive, a blue flash opened over the road and a corpse fell out of it. Red robe, chest eaten through by acid. A red robe mage of the kingdom of Sale, which explained the dragon completely, because red robes are fanatics, and their idea of research is poking large things with sticks. He hit the mud and did not bounce. Then something else came out of the sky and hit me in the face. It was an egg. Black iron, cracked, smoking gently, and heavy enough that I sat down. While I was still deciding whether I had a concussion, the crack opened and a head came out. Flat, broad, 3 blunt horns, black scales, a yellowish belly, and 2 wings that had been badly burned. It looked like a magical version of a German shepherd, and it was dying. Arthur, who had recovered his composure and lost it again in under a minute, grabbed my sleeve. "My lord, quickly, use the Pact of Life." I had one, a single leaf of the world tree, the only thing my mother ever left me, a life contract. It shares your life with another creature, it repairs fatal wounds, and if you ever find the right partner, it can even repair a damaged soul. I want to be clear that I thought about it for about half a second. "Sign a contract with me," I told the dying lizard. "If you don't say anything, I'll take that as a yes." Green light went through both of us. Something small and warm settled into the back of my mind, looked around and said, "Oh my, are you daddy?" I have negotiated with 3 gods. Nobody has ever put me on the back foot that fast. She ate her own eggshell, all of it, crunching, like the whole thing was a complimentary starter, and her scales visibly hardened while she chewed. Then she burped, opened a pair of sapphire eyes, decided I was furniture, and fell asleep in my arms weighing about 10 pounds. And then the world stopped. Not stopped as in went quiet, stopped. The mist froze mid-roll. A carter stayed leaning at an angle no man holds. A drop of water hung off Eleanor's chin and stayed there. 9 rings. Time stands still. That is a spell so far above my station that the only useful thing I could do with the information was calculate. To cast it that casually, you need to be level 25 or better, which is not a mage, that is a demigod. I turned around and looked into a vertical pupil 2 meters tall, silver gray. 50 meters of dragon, coiled over the road like weather with an opinion, 400 years old at minimum, 12 black, ring-shaped scales down his spine. A time dragon. His name, and I only know this because I read it in a lore entry in another life, is Ethelred, and he could have taken a floating city apart with his teeth. Is this adorable little fellow your offspring? I want you to understand the arithmetic here. Wrong answer, and there is no second answer. That's right, he said, before I could produce a syllable. Although it's not a real dragon, it is indeed my offspring. He reached down with one claw and touched the hatchling's burned wings, and they were simply not burned anymore. The panel came back. Give the little one away. Misfortune, level 4. Keep her. Lucky, level 4. I did not consult the panel. I said it out loud because he was listening. My life is now intertwined with this little one. I will do everything in my power to raise her. Something moved in that enormous silver eye that I am fairly sure was curiosity. 400 years old, and I had managed to be mildly interesting. The contract has been made, and I will watch over you through time. I want to be honest about the 10 seconds before I answered him, because I have told this story with more dignity than it deserves. A demigod asked me whether a creature I had owned for 90 seconds was mine. The correct play, the safe play, the play any survivor makes, is to hand her over. She is a hatchling. He is her progenitor, or near enough. Nobody in any court on this continent would blink. I would walk away from that road alive, with a legendary time dragon owing me a small courtesy, which is worth more than any egg. And the panel was sitting right there in the corner of my eye telling me, in numbers, that giving her away was misfortune 4 and keeping her was lucky 4, which is the game telling you the answer. I did not answer because of the panel. I want that on the record too, because it is going to matter enormously later when I find out who has been writing those panels. I answered because I had a warm thing asleep on my forearm that had called me daddy while it was dying, and I had already decided, and the deciding took no time at all and used no arithmetic whatsoever. Then he was gone, and the mist started rolling again, and Eleanor caught the water drop on her chin and had no idea she had been holding it. Here is what I took from that. Day 1 in this body, and I have been noticed by something enormous, which is exactly the sort of attention that gets a man killed. But it cuts the other way, too. Whoever poisoned Julian Thorne with a nice quiet cup of tea now has a legendary time dragon standing behind me, watching, and no plan survives that. I named her Kyra. She did not object, mostly because she was asleep. The axle broke again on the way out, because of course it did. Eleanor rode up alongside my window, with her helmet under her arm and her ears going pink, which they did roughly every time she spoke to me. My lord. She's much cuter than the Earl's most beloved summon. Which one is that? The Wind Serpent King. I looked down at 10 pounds of sleeping lizard who had eaten her own packaging. Fair. Somebody suggested we loot the red robe. 3 or 4 magic items on him easily, and we were poor enough that I could feel it in my teeth. His death has nothing to do with us, I said. Don't invite trouble. Arthur agreed loudly. Eleanor watched the faces of the men who had suggested it and said nothing at all. And that night, she made herself a private promise that I did not hear for another 2 months. We drove past the ruins of Sweetwater Town on the way through. Broken walls, charred bone, tens of thousands of people who died without ever learning who did it, in a town that had been on the map since before the Empire came here. Nobody in the convoy spoke. And then, on the far side, in the middle of a dead place where nothing should have been alive, something looked at me. I felt it in my back teeth. Every instinct I own stood up at once and said run, and I have enough respect for those instincts to have died only once. I told Arthur to keep the horses moving and not to stop for anything. Behind us, after we had gone, the air over the ruins folded quietly along a seam. I did not see it. I only know it happened because of what came out of there later. Arthur unrolled the map in the dusk and gave me the 2 options a butler gives you when he has already chosen. Outpost 16, half an hour ahead, 10 men, walls, a tower. Or push on and spend 2 hours on the road under the crimson moon. Let me explain the moon, because it is the reason nobody on this continent goes out at night. It is red. There is a darker spot on it that looks unpleasantly like a pupil. Under its light, living things change, and the change runs on a schedule. Days 1 to 7, the body. About a month in, the mind, and they go bloodthirsty. After that, the soul, and then they are not infected anymore, they are faithful. Ordinary wilderness sits at adventure level 7 under that light. The mutated things average level 4. Here is the part that kept me awake. In my memory of this world, the crimson moon does not become a real problem for another 20 years. which means either everyone was wrong or something about it is on a much older clock than anyone bothered to check. I chose the outpost. Eat there, then move. Outpost 16 was 10 men and a fence, and its captain was a scarred 31-year-old named Caleb who came out and begged. Something had come to Bay Village yesterday, something dangerous. Every man he had was from Bay Village, and by law he could not release a single one of them without the authorization of the lord of the territory, which was me. I had been the lord of the territory for 9 days and had not yet seen it. The panel came up. This one cost me 100 coins out of the 108 I had. Lead them back. Misfortune, level 3. Refuse, lucky, level 5. I took the misfortune on purpose. That sounds insane until you understand what the numbers measure. The value is not how bad it will be. The value is how deeply I get involved. Lucky 5 means I stay clean, I stay small, and I stay exactly as weak as I am now. Misfortune 3 means I walk into it, and everything I want is on the other side of walking into it. Also, I wanted the swords. 10 more men is 10 more men. My luck flipped to -3. Fine. Then I read the soldiers, because my one remaining party trick is that I can look at a person and see what they are. 17 years old, level 1 warrior, White Wolf swordsmanship, level 1, luck, +5. His name was Rowan, and in the future I remembered, he becomes a legendary witcher who kills a Balrog by himself in about 20 years. Perfect. Let me see what surprises contacting the Chosen One brings me. Dinner was half a pound of dried meat per pot, on my order, and black bread boiled until it stopped being a weapon. Rowan actually said it out loud. Is our Lord so generous? Elder Silas slid onto the log beside him with the ladle still in his hand and started talking about the Teal family and Count Casimir. 40 minutes later, he had everything about Bay Village out of that boy, and Rowan never noticed a single question being asked. Caleb's lips got thinner and thinner. Elder Silas's technique is worth stealing, and I have stolen it. He does not ask questions, he complains. He sat down next to Rowan with a ladle and complained about the roads, and Rowan agreed about the roads and mentioned which stretch floods. He complained about the price of salt, and Rowan told him where the village actually buys it and for how much. He complained that his knees were bad and that he was too old for a march like this, and Rowan, being 17 and kind, told him it was only 2 more days and described the entire route, including the ford. 40 minutes, no questions. A complete picture of a settlement neither of us had ever seen, including its water, its money, its approaches, and its morale. Caleb sat 6 feet away and watched it happen, and his lips got thinner and thinner, and he could not think of a single point at which to interrupt, because nobody had asked anything. Arthur brought me the entire transcript. Young man, let me teach you a lesson. As long as you don't become the protagonist's enemy, you can generally live a good life. Kyra ate 20 pounds of dried meat at that dinner. She weighed 25 pounds afterward. I did the math twice. Before we went out under the moon, Arthur ran the protocol. No skin in the moonlight, ever. Hood, mask, gloves. If a companion gets damaged, you wrap him in cloth and you tie him, and you do not argue about it. Holy water and cleansing potions wash off mild distortion and cost more than the man usually earns in a month. Approach no strangers on the road at night. The masks had alchemical lenses in them that block the light, and the pleasant side effect is you can see in the dark. I want to sit on that protocol for a moment, because it is the first thing that made me understand where I actually was. I knew all of it, every line. I could have recited the mask specifications from memory before Arthur opened his mouth, because in my old life, it was a tooltip. You hovered over the moon icon and a box appeared and it said, in about 40 words, "Do not go out at night unprotected." Then I stood in a mud field at dusk and watched 120 people put on masks with the practiced speed of people who have buried somebody who did not. A woman tied her son's hood shut and then checked it twice and then checked it a third time, and her hands were completely steady, which is worse. Elder Silas went down the line with a stick and tapped wrists. Not to be cruel, because gloves ride down when you carry things, and 2 centimeters of bare wrist for 2 hours is a real number, and he has apparently been checking wrists for 30 years. And then a carter I did not know the name of asked Arthur, quietly, what the procedure was if somebody in his cart started changing on the road. And Arthur told him, wrap him in cloth, tie him, and do not open the bag for anyone, including him. And the carter nodded. He did not argue. He just wanted the procedure. There is a version of this world in a box on a desk somewhere, and in that version, the moon is a debuff. Arthur cast Inspire over the whole convoy, which is a 1-ring spell, and did about as much as a good speech, and said, let's go home. 2 kilometers in, the first wolf came out of the reeds. It was already wrong. Crimson Moon does not leave the shape alone. It went for Arthur, and my 60-year-old butler put a rapier through its eye socket without changing expression, and the body kept fighting anyway, for 4 or 5 seconds, until Elder Silas split the skull with a machete. Primary flesh essence, 10 gold coins. Eleanor reached for her bow, and I told her not to. Conserve your strength, let the men learn. Then I did the thing that made Arthur's soul leave his body. I announced the split. 30% to whoever lands the kill, 25 to whoever crippled it. 15 split among everyone who was in the fight. 30 split across the whole convoy, including the men who held the horses. Arthur got me alone behind a cart within about 4 seconds. My lord, all spoils of the territory belong to the lord. How much is a dead wolf worth, Arthur? 10 gold. How much is 120 people who will actually fight worth? The argument behind the cart took 4 minutes, and I lost the first 3 of them. His case was not greed. Arthur has never taken a copper that was not his. His case was that a lord who divides spoils has admitted the spoils were ever in question. That men paid in shares start having opinions about the size of the shares. And that in 11 years of service, he has watched exactly this arrangement destroy 2 households. He is right about all of that. It is going to happen to me eventually. What I said was that we have 120 people, 10 of whom are soldiers, and about 11 hours until whatever is in that swamp finds us again, and that I would rather have 120 people with opinions than 10 people with orders. What I did not say is the other half. A man who has been handed his own share once will never again believe the version where the Lord takes everything. And once he stops believing it, I could not make him believe it again if I tried. He will tell his children. I was not buying a wolf pelt. I was buying the next 20 years of that sentence. He stood there recalculating his entire professional life. Then he went and read the terms out loud, in a voice that carried, and improved my delivery, and by the end of it, he sounded like it had been his idea, which is the correct behavior in a butler. They wanted to know how their crippled lord suddenly knew alchemy and battlefield economics. Arthur invented a prophecy talent that awakens at 18, on the spot, unprompted, and I confirmed I had seen visions during the life contract. It is a stupid cover story. It held for 4 months. 3 more wolves died. Elder Silas coached Rowan through all 3. Cut the legs first, then the head. Never the middle. The middle is what they want you to hit. And I discovered a rule I had not known. Kills my men make give me experience, because I pay them. Not because they follow me, because I pay them. The system is very clear about this, and I found that both useful and deeply funny. Then the swamp emptied itself at us, fishmen first, and goblins and kobolds behind them, which is a sentence that sounds harmless if you have never been on this continent. Individually, they are pathetic. Collectively, they are in the top 3 killers of human beings by volume, and mutated fishmen grow to about 1.2 meters and put bone spurs on their claws. Eleanor paired them off, shield and spear, all down the line, and held. Then 30 or 40 aberrations came at once, and 2 of them were mutated giant crocodiles 7 meters long at challenge level 7. The line broke in the head before it broke on the ground. I could hear it. Men stop shouting and start breathing wrong. So I stood up on the cart where everyone could see me, and I threw a fireball into the wolf pack. About 10 of them stopped existing. There is a specific silence that comes after that, and I have learned to enjoy it. 120 people all decided at the same moment that the crippled boy with the crest might be worth dying next to. The first crocodile came at us, and I put a fireball into its head and made a crater 4 or 5 meters wide in the mud. It crawled out of the crater with a third of its jaw gone and kept coming, because 7 meters of anything takes some convincing, so I gave it a second one, and the head came apart. The system chimed. You used a spell beyond your level. Fireball, 60 mana, 50% surcharge, 16 points of damage, 100% increased critical hit chance, 70 experience points, and 1 skill point. 70 mana left in the tank, and a crowd looking at me like I was the weather. I stood there and let them look. It is the cheapest force multiplier in the world, and it costs nothing but posture. The second crocodile I gave to Eleanor, because a commander who never commands is decoration. Her plan took 30 seconds. Short bows to the rogues, aim for the eyes, blind it. Elder Silas and Rowan with fuel jars, go for the head. Nobody stands behind it, ever. That tail will take a man's spine out through his chest, and it turns badly, so keep it turning. She rode bait herself, on a horse, at night, in a swamp. 2 arrows into the head. 3rd arrow burst an eye, and I watched tentacles start regrowing it immediately, which was new information and not welcome. The fuel jars went over its back. A fire arrow lit it. Alchemical fuel sticks and burns even in water, which is why Arthur carries it, and the crocodile did not care. It kept chasing her, on fire, health bar at 10 and regenerating, and Eleanor's horse was starting to blow. I stood up again. Magic missile. 3 bolts through the skull. She came back with her jaw set, ashamed, and I got there first. Don't worry, with me backing you up, you can fully unleash your talents. Something happened behind her eyes that I recognize from every good subordinate I have ever had. The one where they decide they would die for the man who understood them. I have no defense for what I thought in the same second, which was, taking action at crucial moments not only establishes authority, it also allows you to rightfully steal kills. 800 experience, 4 skill points. Arthur found me afterward with a ledger and the specific face of a man about to say a number. 3,000 gold from the family. 2,500 spent on supplies before we left. 230 handed out tonight. Spend it, I said. I'll refine the flesh essence into potions and enchanted weapons. 1,000 gold minimum out of tonight. Triple profit. He did not believe me. He wrote it down anyway, which is the whole reason I kept him. 4 men made level 1 warrior before dawn. Rowan learned basic swordsmanship from Elder Silas in about an hour, and pushed White Wolf toward level 2 while he was at it, which is the single most obnoxious thing I have ever watched a 17-year-old do. 2/3 of the way out of Misty Swamp, Elder Silas's voice came down the line, flat and calm, which is how you know it is bad. Large numbers of enemies spotted ahead. 400 fishmen, maybe more. In the dark, you count the eyes and divide. Eleanor had the wagon fort up in under 3 minutes. Carts in a ring with the tailgates out, horses inside, long shields wedged in every gap, a trench scratched in front, archers on the roofs, fuel jars spaced around the perimeter where a man could reach one without leaving his post. She had never done it before. She had read about it, which is the part that should worry people. Arthur pressed 2 scrolls into my hand like he was handing over his own kidneys. Fireball. 200 gold, my lord. Then he turned around and did something I did not teach him. There are plenty of gold coins out there, he shouted. It all depends on everyone's luck. I hope we can find at least 30 sets of materials tonight. He turned a death battle into a bounty hunt in 1 sentence. Isn't that exactly what I just did? Arthur is learning and applying it on the spot. The shield and spear rotation killed about 130 of them before anything went wrong. Then the fuel wall went up and took 80 more instantly, and about 200 all told. And then the survivors upgraded. Deeply infected. Berserk aberration state. Challenge level 2. Then, while I was reading it, 3. Something came down out of the sky, not a spell, a pressure, and my willpower check passed by an amount I did not like. Something changed in the Crimson Moon that night. It got hungrier, and then it got quieter, and I am fairly sure I now know why the moon goes dormant for the next 20 years. It had just eaten. I burned both fireball scrolls to hold the line, and that is when Rowan turned around and tried to kill me. He was 6 feet away, White Wolf swordsmanship, level 1, and the whole point of that style is that the direct attack is so fierce it cannot be dodged. His eyes were wrong. Somebody had their hand in his head. Caleb's voice, and I will remember this until I die. I can die, but my family can't. Kira hit Rowan in the ribs. She was 6 pounds heavier than she had been that morning, and she went through the air like a thrown brick. The sword came down on her back and sparked off it. She sat on him and bit his arm and made a noise I can only describe as an offended kettle. Which was the point, because the sword was the loud one. The quiet one was already behind me with a dagger glowing blue, going for a kidney, and I know the pattern because I have seen it 100 times. Kidney, twist, throat, 3 steps, 2 seconds, and a berserk potion in the offhand in case any of it went wrong. He was very good. He was also about 40 seconds too late, because in the middle of the fight, I had leveled. Consuming 1,000 experience points. Raise your Arcanist level to level 2. Consume 5 skill points. Upgrade sleep spell to level 5. I want to be exact about what I did with those 11 minutes, because I have been accused of luck, and I would like to defend myself. I had 1,000 experience banked, and I had been saving it. I spent it in the middle of a fight, standing in mud, with 400 fishmen on my line, because I had counted my own casts and I knew I had 2 left. Then I spent 5 skill points on sleep, all of them, everything I had, and took it from level 4 to level 5. Level 4 sleep is a good spell. Level 5 sleep is a different object. At level 5, a target below plus 10 willpower does not get a roll. There is no save, there is no resisting it. It is not a contest. And I did not do it because I saw an assassin. I did not see the assassin. Nobody saw the assassin. I did it because I had been in this world for 9 days and something had already tried to kill me once with poison, and I had decided on the road that I was never again going to be the man who ran out of options at the wrong second. Level up refills your mana. Nobody outside the profession knows that. Are you dumbfounded? A freshly made level 5 sleep spell. Unless your willpower is plus 10, or you own a legendary grade iron will feat, there is no way to resist. 9 centimeters is the number Arthur measured afterward with a piece of string, because Arthur is the kind of man who measures. I want to lay out the 2 attacks side by side because whoever built them was good, and I did not appreciate it properly until 3 days later. Attack 1 is loud. A boy everybody trusts, mind-controlled, using a signature style that is famous for being impossible to dodge, in the middle of a night battle at 6 feet. That is not the assassination. That is the flinch. Every guard I have turns toward Rowan. Eleanor turns, Elder Silas turns, and critically, I turn, because a sword coming at your face is not a thing you can reason your way out of turning toward. Attack 2 comes from behind while my whole body is committed to the wrong direction. Whoever planned that understood crowd reflex better than most generals I have worked with. It should have worked. It did work, in the sense that everything up to the last half second went exactly as designed. What killed it was 2 things neither of us had on the board. The first is that a hatchling nobody had ever heard of had gained 16 pounds in a day and a half and hit Rowan before any human on that field had finished turning. The second is that 11 minutes earlier, in the middle of a fishmen tide, I had quietly gone up a level. A level up refills the tank. Nobody outside my profession knows that. So a level 7 assassin did his arithmetic on a spellcaster who had thrown 6 spells and concluded that I was empty. He was correct by every rule he had ever been taught. He fell asleep with the dagger 9 centimeters from my back and hit the mud face first. Caleb dropped his weapon and went down on his knees so fast he skinned them. Arthur dragged the assassin into a carriage by one ankle without a word. Elder Silas came for Rowan with the machete up. Kira had already bitten the boy's sword in half and was sitting on his chest, looking pleased. "He's being controlled by the enemy's magic," I said. "He swung at you, my lord." In my mother's hometown there's an old saying, "A death sentence may be avoided, but a living punishment is hard to escape." I gave him 5 years of service. That is how a legendary witcher ended up working for me. I would like to claim it was strategy. Half of it was that I have never been able to execute a 17-year-old for something that was done to his head. Kyra asked me, in my mind, whether clean spell was a kind of food. I told her no. She was visibly disappointed. We stabilized the rear with 4 magic missiles and then went through the assassin. 4 magic items, 2 berserk potions, 6 healing potions, a teleport scroll, a space belt with 3 cubic meters of storage and 300 gold inside it, 10 bottles of assorted poison, and not one identifying mark on any of it. No crest, no maker's stamp, no laundry number, nothing. Somebody had spent real money making sure I could not find out who they were. Our butcher's bill: 3 carters dead, 7 infected, 4 soldiers hurt, 50 flesh essences, which would refine into about 1,500 gold. And then we did the payout, and the payout is the moment this whole thing actually started. I had Arthur line up all 106 survivors in front of the carts at dawn. Then I named them, every single one, by count. Eleanor commanded 512 fishmen engaged, 26 killed personally, 16 crippled. 61 gold, 40 silver, 96 copper, plus 1 healing potion. Myself, second on the board. 64 killed, 51 crippled. I said that out loud too, because if the Lord is not on the list is a lie. I went down all 106 in order to the copper. A carter named Barnaby started jumping, Ha ha, I told you I killed 2 aberrant fishmen. Then a man named Hawksmoor gave me a number that was not his number. 2 friends backed him up. I looked at my parchment for a moment. I must have remembered it wrong, I said, and paid him. 9 more men came forward in the next 4 minutes. Arthur took over. He held up a white crystal and said, "This is a new spell developed by our Lord," which was a lie so large I nearly complimented him in public. It was an image spell. The crystal projected the battle, in the air, in front of everybody, from 3 angles. We watched Malachi get pulled out of the water by a man named Ethan Bromley. We watched him push Ethan Bromley back into the fishmen so the fishmen would be busy. Arthur put the rapier through him where he stood, said, "May the magician bless Ethan Bromley on his journey," and then crushed the skull so the moon could not get any ideas. Nobody made a sound. The 16 who never fought at all lost their chance to become soldiers and gained a year of service. The liars had their false claims deducted 3 times over, which meant Hawksmoor now owed me 14 silver and 4 copper, and took 3 lashes in the open. Arthur, who had known these men for years, ended it with, "This is the first and last time. The Lord is benevolent, but also dignified." Then I paid the dead. Ethan Bromley's family got 6 gold, 50 silver, and their freedom from service, and I said the number out loud so 106 people heard exactly what a dead man was worth to me. I want to slow down on that payout because it is the single most important thing I did in my first week, and it cost me under 700 gold. Understand what a spoils division looks like everywhere else on this continent. The Lord takes everything. Then the Lord decides, at his leisure, in a room you are not in, what to hand back. If he is generous, you get a meal. If he is a good man, you get a meal and a coin. Nobody counts anything because counting implies the number belongs to you. I counted for 2 hours by lamplight, with Arthur checking my arithmetic and Eleanor checking Arthur's. By the time I got to the 60th name, the men had stopped shifting their feet. They were listening for their own names, the way you listen for a verdict. A cart driver called Kieran, who had held horses all night and killed nothing, got his share out of the 30% that goes to everyone, and he stared at the coins in his palm like they had been handed to him by mistake. Barnaby, who killed 2 aberrant fishmen and had been telling everyone about it since midnight, jumped straight off the ground when I read his number. "Ha ha, I told you, I told all of you." And then Hawksmoor lied to me, and 2 of his friends lied with him. I could have stopped it there. I had the crystal in Arthur's pocket the whole time. Instead, I said I must have remembered it wrong and paid him in full, and let 9 more men come forward over the next 4 minutes, because I wanted every liar in that convoy to identify himself before I turned the lamp on. Arthur did the turning. He is better at it than I am. He held up a white crystal and told 106 people it was a new spell developed by their Lord, which is not remotely what it was, and then the air above the carts filled up with last night. You could watch it from 3 angles. You could watch a man named Ethan Bromley wade in and drag Malachi out of the water by his belt. And you could watch Malachi, 40 seconds later, put both hands on his rescuer's chest and push him back into the fishmen so that they would have something else to do. Nobody in that crowd made a sound. Not one man. Arthur did not raise his voice either. He walked up, put the rapier through Malachi's heart, said, "May the magician bless Ethan Bromley on his journey," and then crushed the skull with his heel so the crimson moon could not get any ideas about the body. Then he turned around and finished the payroll. The 16 who never engaged at all lost their eligibility to become soldiers and gained a year of service. The 10 liars had their false claims deducted at 3 times the rate, which meant Hawksmoor finished the morning owing me 14 silver and 4 copper, and took 3 lashes at the tailgate in front of everybody. And that is when Arthur said the sentence that has been quoted back at me in 4 different provinces since. This is the first and last time. The Lord is benevolent, but also dignified. That is a strange thing to be proud of. I was proud of it anyway. 7,420 experience, 6 skill points. And then the panel gave me something new. You have changed the fate of 120 people and earned 642 fate coins. 642. From 1 payroll. Let's set a small goal first. Destroy the Nethril Empire. The assassin's kit was worth more than the entire convoy. 2 fine gold daggers called Dark Fang, 3,500 each, 8,000 for the pair. A shadow cloak at 3,600, stealth +3, magic resistance +2, and a spell barrier. Boots of swiftness 4,800, speed +6. A level 7 assassin walking around in 20,000 gold of equipment. Paying that much to kill a level 1 arcanist in a swamp is not a hit. It is a statement. I put the cloak on. I kept the boots to sell. Kyra ate both daggers, whole, one after the other, like breadsticks. 7,000 gold of fine gold assassin's blades, gone, followed by a small burp. I did not stop her because by the time I understood what was happening, there was nothing left to stop. Then her panel offered me an evolution, 5,000 experience and 500 fate coins. For context, the highest ranked contract creature in the game I used to play was a red dragon named Arena, and her evolution cost 3,500 and a pile of epic materials. I paid it in about a second and a half. The evolution took her about 40 minutes, and I sat on the floor of the carriage with her the entire time, which is not a thing I have ever admitted to anybody in this territory. Here is what 500 fate coins bought, in context. In my old life, the highest ranked contract creature in the entire game was a red dragon named Arena. Getting her to her second form cost her owner 3,500 experience and a shopping list of epic materials that took a 40-man guild 11 weeks to assemble, and there were 4 of them on the whole server. Kyra's evolution offered itself to me unprompted, priced in a currency that did not exist until 9 days ago, on a Tuesday, in a broken carriage. I want to know why. I have wanted to know why ever since. At the time, I was too busy paying it. She woke up silver, level 1 warlock, challenge level 9, 100 total attribute points on her first day of life, luck +5. Equipment listed as Shadowfang, which is what happens to 2 daggers that get eaten by something with a talent for it, 2 feats, dragon might, an aura that takes 5 off the willpower of everything around her, and banish breath, which removes a target from time for 1 month. The assessment line read, unmissable thighs. The one under it read, Kyra is the real star. I have no comment. The system says what it wants. We came out of the swamp at the Silver Moon River, and Rowan stood up in the cart and said, finally home, in the voice of a man who is about to be wrong. Bay Village is famous for exactly one thing, and it is salted cod. 5 silver a fish. It would be a real trade if the fishmen let them out on the water more than twice a year. That was the thought I was having when a 3-meter troll came out of the tree line on fire and doing well. Aberrant troll. Elite. Challenge level 12. Burning and thriving because the fire was cauterizing wounds faster than the wounds could open. It was chasing a small figure who had clearly been running for a while. Her name was Penelope, Rowan's sister, 15. She had lured the thing out of the village on purpose, alone, and now she was out of road. She turned around with a dagger in her hand, and I heard her say it. No, even if it means death, I cannot become such a monster. And then, because she was 15, bye now. Rowan reached her about a second before I put a magic missile through the troll's chest and left a hole you could get a fist into. Fuel jars, fire, done. Her sleeves were torn open. She had been out under that moon with bare skin for the better part of an hour, which meant purification, which meant money, and I had not even seen my own house yet. I finished the troll with something I should not have been able to cast. Eldrin's Acid Arrow, second circle. Julian Thorne never learned it. More to the point, Eldrin will not invent it for another 8 years. 2,000 experience, 2 skill points, 231 fate coins. And then the weave itself reached over and poured power into me. Maximum mana, 260 to 280. That is the standard reward for authoring a second circle spell, and I had not authored it, I had remembered it. Something enormous turned its attention on me for about a heartbeat, and then politely looked away. I stood in a burning field with my ears ringing and gave myself a rule. Occasionally creating a spell can be read as talent. Keep creating clever, elegant, useful spells that nobody else has, and you stop being a prodigy and start being a specimen. That night, I meditated properly for the first time in this body, and I saw my own spells the way an arcanist sees them. Not words, structures. Line drawings etched into my soul, and every one of them was wearing my face. Light spell, 8 mana nodes, 3 of them optimized, which is why it reads as level 3. Sleep spell, 10 nodes, 5 lit. I could have stayed in there for a week. Daddy, come back quickly. I came back, Bay Village in the morning, March the 2nd. A round palisade covered in claw marks at exactly troll height. 4 wooden gates, mud roads, cod hanging under every eave like brown laundry. 2,000 people whose entire annual income is fish twice a year and whatever the soil gives up. The gossip was already going before we reached the gate. Sweetwater Town burned. The new lord pays a gold coin a man. Caleb got 8. And under it, the actual sentence, from an old woman with a basket. I can't be bothered with anything else. I just hope the new lord is truly benevolent and won't raise taxes again. Lord's mansion sat behind a 3-meter stone wall with chop marks all over it. The previous lord was an old wood knight who sold up and retired to Carl Plain, which tells you how the last 20 years went here. I had been inside my own house for about 40 minutes when a merchant rode in out of Misty Swamp on nothing but a hunch. Byron Reed Harding, 36, level 2 bard, luck +2. He had crossed a swamp full of things that eat people on spec to be the first man to swear loyalty to a lord he had never met, and he brought ebony furniture, 200 gold, 2,000 pounds of flour, and 500 pounds of rice as a hello. His cargo list was better. 400,000 pounds of wheat, 5,000 pounds of iron, 200 spears, 200 leather armors, 50 longbows, 5,000 arrows, 2,000 magical plants, 100 holy waters, 50 potions, and 2 complete sets of alchemy equipment at 500 gold each. Not bad, I said. I'll take them all. I paid him with the assassin's space belt and the boots of swiftness and pinned a white mage tower badge on him. Don't let me down. Then Arthur read him the shopping list, and I watched a grown merchant's soul briefly leave through the top of his head. 2 million pounds of wheat, 100,000 pounds of rice seed, 10,000 chickens, 10,000 ducks, 1,000 pigs, 500 oxen, 50 war horses, 20 crossbows, 100 magic crystals, and then the part that actually mattered, a recruitment bounty on talent. 50 gold for an intermediate craftsman on a 5-year contract, 1,000 for a senior, 5,000 for a master. One condition attached, and only one. They have to teach apprentices. They have to hand the knowledge over. Byron Reed went very still because he had never in his life heard a spellcaster lord ask for that. Spellcaster lords buy craftsmen the way you buy a hammer. Nobody asks the hammer to make more hammers. He asked me to repeat it. Not because he had not heard. My lord, the teaching clause, forgive me, is it a condition of employment or a condition of payment? Both. He teaches or he does not get paid, and he teaches or he does not stay. And the apprentices belong to? Themselves. That is where he stopped writing. I watched a professional merchant work through the implications in front of me, which took him about 40 seconds and visibly cost him something. If the apprentices belong to the territory, this is an ordinary purchase, and the lord is buying a workshop. If the apprentices belong to themselves, then in 5 years there are 12 blacksmiths in a village that had none. And not one of them owes me anything, except that I am the only man who ever gave them a trade. There is no contract anywhere in that sentence. He looked up and asked the question straight, which is why I kept him. Forgive me, what are you actually building? A place where the best thing a clever poor man can do with his life is stay here. He wrote that down too. I know for a fact he read it back to himself on the road, because he quoted it to a competitor 8 weeks later in a tavern in Blood Moon City. He got it slightly wrong. It still worked. Arthur's parting instruction was, do not take the Sweetwater Town road. Then the children of Bay Village came through the streets, waving parchment and shrieking, Lord is hiring, 5 copper a day, lunch provided, wages paid daily. And Byron Reed turned around in his saddle to watch them go, because he had never seen anybody use children as criers either. The whole village came to the north gate, not because of the soldiers, because of the box of gold coins sitting open on the table. Terms: 16 to 60, any gender, 5 copper a day, paid daily, lunch free, work for half a month, 5 copper bonus if you come early. Registration was name, family, profession, skills. In 1 hour, I had the complete household register of my own territory. 2,346 people, 651 children under 15, 30 professionals, of whom 15 were warriors, 10 hunters, 5 rogues, 1,455 people between 16 and 60, 240 over 60, Exactly one person above level 5, and he was the old village chief, a mid-tier hunter named Sterling. Arthur worked it out about a minute after I did. Is this the Lord's true purpose? Getting everyone to build the wall was a warm-up. He was half right. The wall was real. I did want the wall. But a household register is a weapon, and nobody out here has ever held one. Think about what I was handed that morning for the price of 120 gold in day wages. I know how many hunters I have. I know that exactly 5 people in this territory can move quietly. I know that 240 people are over 60, which means 240 people carry skills that are about to die with them unless I buy those skills in the next 4 years. I know that 651 children exist, and that no lord before me ever bothered to count them, because children are not taxable. And I know that the entire professional class of my territory is 30 people, one of whom is above level 5, and he is the village chief, and he is 60-something. Every other lord on this coast is guessing. I am not. Sterling's map was the other half of the morning, and Sterling's map was drawn on the back of a tax parchment in charcoal by a man who has been personally afraid of every mark on it. 5 death zones on the forest edge, 2 kobold caves, 2 goblin strongholds, 1 knoll camp with over 1,000 in it. He drew the 5th one and then put the charcoal down and did not want to say the next part. 5 trolls, 4 now. 1 died last night, which is why he had sent Caleb for me. Challenge level 7 each, with regeneration, which in practical terms for a village with no spellcaster means immortal. You can hit a troll all day. You can put a spear through a troll and watch the hole close around the shaft. So Bay Village had been paying them, in sheep, for 11 years, the way you pay weather. I asked how many sheep. Sterling said 40 a year, and then he said the thing that told me everything about the previous 11 years. Some years they take the shepherd as well. Those years we send 39. Sterling had the map, and Sterling had the bad news. 5 death zones on the edge of the gloomy forest, 2 kobold caves, 2 goblin strongholds, 1 knoll camp with 1,000 in it, and 5 trolls. 4 now. Challenge level 7 each, with regeneration, which for a village with no spellcaster means unkillable. Bay Village had been paying them in sheep for years, the way you pay weather. Sterling volunteered to be the bait. 60-something years old, level 6 hunter, and his stated reason was that the young people in the village had not experienced much danger, and he would like them to survive the experience of getting some. He ran 4 trolls onto a 6-meter pit lined with stakes, and 2 of them went in. Then Kyra dropped out of the sky and said in a bright little voice in my head, "Banish breath." 1 troll simply stopped being anywhere, for a month. She played with the last one. That is the only honest word. She learned mid-fight that hitting a regenerating creature in the body is a waste of time, and that the throat and the heart are not. She figured this out in about 90 seconds and adjusted, and the troll dropped its club and ran. I want to be fair to that troll. It had spent its entire life being the most frightening thing in the gloomy forest, and then a creature the size of a large dog dropped on it out of a clear sky, ignored every blow it landed, took its throat apart on the second attempt, and looked bored. Running was the only rational act performed by anybody in that clearing. She tilted her head at me, genuinely puzzled. It ran away? Surround him and grab him, I said. The soldiers found out that day that a troll cannot break a shield wall, and Eleanor and Elder Silas turned the capture into a live drill on the spot. Halfway through, Kyra remembered she had one in reserve, unbanished troll number 2 out of thin air, and started the whole lesson over with a fresh one. We took all 4 alive. Sterling's old whaling net from the abandoned port project fished them out of the pit, and I want to note for the record that a village that has never once had a good year still had a whaling net in a barn on the off chance. I needed them alive. I did not explain why. Rowan looked at 4 bound trolls and said, "From now on, they'll be our daily sparring partners," and he was not joking, and he was right. Penelope, watching Kira from a safe distance with an expression I have seen on exactly 1 other person, said, "Will I be able to become Kira in the future? My master said I should be able to after I reach a higher level." Children threw things at the caged trolls all afternoon. Adults asked to join the hunt, and Sterling drove them back to work with a stick. Lunch was corn porridge, black bread, sausage, and fish soup for the soldiers, eaten in the open, watched by 2,000 very thin people. Arthur did the arithmetic he had been avoiding. 2,000 villagers cannot fund 100 professional soldiers on tax. I don't expect to support professional soldiers with taxes anymore, I said. He wrote that down too. He had stopped arguing entirely by then, which I found slightly unnerving. Since you are going to be following an army around for the rest of this story, let me tell you the doctrine I gave Eleanor, because everything that happens later is built on it. Individual skill for the ones with real talent. Routine drill for coordinated combat for everyone every day. Different weapons for different terrain. And the line she wrote on the inside of her own helmet. Our soldiers are few in number, and they are not cannon fodder. Sterling asked how a villager could get in. Selection every 2 weeks. Anyone who can keep the pace. Then came the drill that converted the entire village, and it converted them by accident. 104 men, 4 ranks, marching like a wedding party. 2 hours of formation work. Then 5 squads with lime-tipped sticks. Elder Silas's squad had the bigger men, the better weapons, and most of the professionals, and they charged like a bar fight. Eleanor's squad held the shield wall and put the spears through the gaps and annihilated them. Then did it 3 more times in a row to 3 more squads. That evening, the losers had questions. Why did Eleanor's squad get a separate table with fresh barbecue on it? They won. Why did they get new uniforms? They won. Why does Elder Silas spend 2 hours a night coaching them personally? They won. I gave Eleanor the rule out loud so she would use it deliberately for the rest of her life. Under the premise of ensuring a certain degree of fairness, simply using the comparison gap will motivate the vast majority of soldiers. You are probably wondering why a man with a legendary time dragon watching his back is spending his mornings counting fish and his evenings arranging barbecue. In my old life, my companions and I spent years taking the Netheril Empire apart on paper. Here is what we found. The Seventon Council speaks for the 7 Towers. The 7 Towers speak for the Grand Arcanists. The Grand Arcanists speak for the Spellcaster class. Hundreds of millions of ordinary people are not represented in that sentence anywhere. There is exactly 1 ladder out of the bottom, and it is becoming a Spellcaster. And if you were not born with the talent, there is no second ladder. The noble houses exist to harvest 2 things, resources and Spellcaster children, and to send both upward. The Netheril Empire was less of a country and more of a huge Spellcaster organization that controlled a vast population. There are 2 ways to bring a thing like that down. You can kill the Grand Arcanists, and I have done that once already, and it cost me everything I had. Or you can develop the one resource they have never once bothered to count, millions of ordinary people. Every profession that is not a spellcaster, the collective. That is what I am building in a fishing village that smells of cod. I am aware of how it looks. That night I went down into the cellar under Lord's mansion, which was now a laboratory, because Byron Reed's 2 sets of alchemy equipment had arrived, and I had spent the afternoon installing pure water generators, explosion barriers, and flame nozzles like a man who has done this before. 2 trolls, chained in adamantite. Clean spell first, because I am not a savage. Sleep spell second, because I am not an idiot. Then I drew 4,000 milliliters out of each of them. Their health dropped past half. By morning they were back to 80%. On a diet of kitchen scraps, because that is what a regenerative talent does when you feed it. The recipe took me 1 night. Filter. Reduce 500 milliliters over a flame. Moonflower crushed in pure water. Powdered root of blood activating grass. Powdered red perilla leaf. Blood revitalization potion. Excellent quality. 500 milliliters. 10 milliliters restores 1 point of health. Cost per batch. Moonflower, 8 silver. Activating grass, 20. 2 red perilla, 20. Call it 50 silver. That batch bottles into 10 bottles at 50 silver each. 5 gold. 10 times profit. And the raw material eats 2 silver of scraps a day, and then grows the raw material back by itself. 80 bottles that night. 40 gold. My alchemy skill went from 88 to 96. The 2 trolls watched me smiling to myself over the flasks, and I know exactly what they were thinking, because it was written all over both of them. This human is terrifying. The next morning, Kira learned to talk. She had been making noises for days. That morning, she climbed onto the table, put her nose an inch from mine, and said, "Tooth, tooth." Then, with enormous effort, "Penelope, taught, me." I wrote Penelope an employment contract on the spot. The pay was generous. The contract had exactly 1 clause, which was that she and Kyra were both required to eat growth-promoting food every single day. Kyra carried the parchment around in her mouth for the rest of the afternoon, showing it to people. The village caught fire without me touching it. They worked, and they watched the soldiers eat meat twice a day, and they got restless, and then Sterling let the recruitment terms slip while drunk. By the next morning, 2,000 people were discussing how you get in. Nobody slacked off even on the days I was not there, which is the only management technique that has ever worked in the history of anything. Then I tested the children. Here is the thing the Empire has never fixed. There is an annual talent inspection. It misses enormous numbers of people. The obvious prodigies get scooped young. Ordinary children get tested at 10, 12, 15, and each test costs money. And if your family cannot pay, your child is simply never tested at all. I tested everyone. I started with the under 10s, a 15-year-old named Eliza with freckles and an intelligence of 11. 50% chance of becoming a beginner mage. The crystal barely lit. Her face fell apart. Very good, I said. Eliza passed. A boy called Braun, 1 meter 80, perception 15, no mage talent at all. You can become an excellent druid. I picked druid because a druid is controllable and a paladin is not, and I would like that on the record before anyone gets sentimental about me. Of the 300 plus children over 10, 165 had professional potential. 14 of them could be mages. Eliza is the one I think about. Freckles, 15. Intelligence 11, which is 1 point above the average adult in that village, and 9 points below anything a Celadon Academy would look at twice. 50% chance of becoming a beginner mage, and beginner mage is the bottom rung of the bottom ladder. The crystal in her hands lit up about as much as a candle behind a curtain. She saw it. She knew exactly what it meant. Her whole face came apart, and she started to apologize, which is the thing that made me put the parchment down. Very good, Eliza passed. She did not believe me. She looked at Arthur, who nodded. She looked at her mother in the doorway, who did not know what any of it meant. Then she looked back at the crystal, and then she cried, standing up with her hands at her sides in front of 40 people. 50% chance of a beginner mage. In Celadon, they would not have charged her the testing fee. They would simply have not tested her, because a 50% chance of a beginner mage is not worth the crystal's wear. She is now the first named graduate of the Professional Training Academy, and she teaches the small class in the mornings. There was a boy after her, Braun, 1 meter 80 at 13, and built like a door. Perception 15, no mage talent at all. You can become an excellent druid. I picked druid for him, and I want to be honest about why, since we are being honest. A druid answers to nature, and nature is not organized. A paladin answers to a church, and a church has an address, and a church will one day send a letter to my territory about one of my own people. 165, in a village of 2,300 that nobody had ever looked at. The future age of heroes and legends did not come from nowhere. The Empire simply never bothered to check. The 10th child under 10 came in alone, in a black robe, and the other children moved away from her without seeming to notice they were doing it. Silver white hair, a gaunt little face, 9 years old, intelligence 14, charisma 18, which at 9 years old is not charm, it is a bloodline leaking through the walls, and it is exactly why the other children are frightened of her without knowing why. Luck, -5, catastrophic. Assessment, beset by misfortune, her life is full of twists and turns. I have read a lot of those assessment lines by now. Most of them are jokes. That one was a warning label on a child. -5 is not bad luck. Bad luck is -1. -5 means the world is actively arranging itself against her. It has been doing it since before she could walk. Every person in that village had felt it without being able to name it. That is why a 9-year-old came to my talent test alone. I knew her name before she said it, Cassandra. In my memory of this world, she becomes Icebird, a level 29 sorceress with a demigod bloodline, and she walks into the central city of the Pfizer trade caravan and takes it apart, kills 3 legendary arcanists, walks out through 2 demigods, and then vanishes from history entirely. Right now, she was 9, and she weighed about as much as a wet coat. The panel offered me a choice. Keep Cassandra, luck -3. Let her go, luck +3. I did not read the second option twice. Your talent is outstanding. I'll take you as my student. Don't worry about the physical changes. You'll gradually control them. She had come to the test for one reason, and I only found it out later. There was a full meal for anyone who took it, and her mother was bedridden, and she wanted to hide the food and carry it home. She had a strip of dried meat in her sleeve when she left the tent. I saw her put it there. I said nothing. She ate the bread and the soup at the table like she was supposed to, slowly, so nobody would look at her. She got the meat home in her sleeve. Her mother would not take it. They argued about a strip of dried meat for 20 minutes, in a room with no fire in it. Eliza found out about that 4 days later and told Elder Silas, and Elder Silas told Arthur, and by the end of that week there was a standing order in the kitchen that nobody ever formally gave and nobody ever wrote down. The children eat at the tables, and whatever the children put in their sleeves is not noticed by anybody. Her mother's name was Alara. I sent Elder Silas's squad to fetch her. They came back with 2 men wounded and 1 prisoner. His name was Thorian. 32. Level 2 Rogue. Bloodhand Slaver Gang, which is a subsidiary of the Pfizer Trade Caravan, which is one of the largest trading houses in the Eastern Province. I have never seen Arthur angry before. He went white and quiet, which on him is worse than shouting. Charm person, and then a conversation. They had tunneled under the Silvermoon River over 10 days. Their camp was due north, near the knoll ground, behind magical rune isolation tablets so nothing could scry it. 100+ men, 20 tents, 20 rogues, and a leader, Bloodhand Kalen, level 10, mid-tier warrior, who in the future, I remembered, becomes a level 25 legendary and one of Pfizer's top hunters. And who, in that future, is the man Cassandra eventually kills. Martial law. 10 gold for any verified piece of information. Combat scrolls issued to every hunter and ranger in the village. 200 men equipped out of the warehouse in 90 minutes. Eleanor rode out fully armed and did not say a word to me on the way, which is how I knew she was furious. 100 soldiers formed up in about a dozen breaths. Old Sterling, who fought orcs and barbarians for 30 years, said quietly that regular Netheril legions cannot do that. Kira flew the reconnaissance and came back sky blue and mostly invisible, which was new. 40 in front, 50 hidden in the woods with long-range crossbows, and several hundred kobolds being herded in from the side as a third force nobody was supposed to see coming. I timed it. Kobolds arrive in 20 minutes. Retreating takes 30. So we attacked. Eleanor's voice. Command the battle, my knight. Invigorating aura. Strength +1, damage +1, movement +2, 50-meter radius. Kira went hunting sentries first, 1 at a time. Throat, quiet. 8 of them, 180 experience. This method that Daddy taught me is really useful. Then I tore a 5th ring scroll, group speed boost, 40% movement, 20% attack, 3 minutes, and it cost 2,000 gold, and I want you to hold that number. The slavers were mid-conversation when the first arrows landed. A man named Gareth was in the middle of a joke about how the little lord had probably brought his child soldiers. He stopped talking because he was charmed and stood perfectly still while a dozen magic missiles arrived. Nobody shielded him. Nobody even noticed he had stopped moving. Then the shield wall came out of the reeds at 40% extra speed, and the mercenaries went onto the spears like fish on a rack. One man got out, Brendan, into the thorns to tell his boss they had provoked something terrible. 5 minutes. 40+ professionals dead. 5 minor injuries on my side. Nobody killed. I want to break that down because it was not luck. Sterling feigned weakness for 2 days so they would be arrogant. Kira scouted, then blinded them by killing every sentry. I read the field from a perspective they did not know existed and picked the single priority kill. Eleanor's aura let 100 men absorb the speed buff. I spent 2,000 gold on 1 scroll at the exact peak of momentum, and I deleted their strongest warrior before contact with a hypnosis and 5 missiles. 500 gold on Eleanor's aura training. 2,000 on 1 scroll. New steel for everybody. Against slavers who did not own 1 enchanted item between them. The slave hunter group makes a lot of money, but that is a matter for higher-ups. They are pawns, disposable. Not even as important as the goods they capture. Then I handed 5 blood revitalization potions to the wounded, in the open, where everybody could see. Sterling watched me do it with a strange expression. He told me later what it was. He was trying to remember the last time an Arcanist cared whether a common soldier lived, and he could not get there. Eleanor gave the speech before round 2. We are the Lord's soldiers, the shield that protects the territory, and the sharp blade that defeats the enemy. 100 men shouted victory across an empty wasteland at 3 in the afternoon, and Brendan heard it from 2 kilometers away and understood he was not looking at a militia. Bloodhand Kalen was 1 meter 90 in full plate with a single-edged axe, and he had killed orcs, beheaded trolls, and hunted ogres, and he had never seen soldiers move the way mine were moving. I know what he decided, because he told his men, and one of them survived. He decided that if it turned, he was running. He drove several hundred kobolds in front of him as cannon fodder. Eleanor hit level 2 knight in the middle of the march and picked up Courage Aura, Morale +2, Strength +1, Attack +10%, which is the sort of thing that happens to her constantly and which she still finds embarrassing. Then Kira landed in the middle of the kobolds and roared, Dragon Might. Several hundred kobolds went flat on their faces in the mud. And then, while I was still enjoying it, they started worshipping. The great dragon. Your humble servant awaits the arrival of the great, beautiful dragon. Fireball into the frozen slavers. Kalen survived it on a necklace that cracked in half, and charged. Weakness spell, 2 more fireballs. Bloodhand Kalen has 4 health remaining and is critically injured. Blue light, gone. A preset escape enchantment. 5,000 gold in materials minimum, 1 use only, and a master enchanter gets it to work about 1 time in 3. Nobody spends that on a hired thug. Somebody wanted Bloodhand Kalen to come home alive specifically. We hunted down the rest. Nobody offered a surrender, and nobody would have taken one. 1,000 experience for the victory bonus, and then, you have changed the fate of 872 people and obtained 1,072 fate coins. And one more thing, out of the prisoners, which I did not enjoy at all, their original target had not been the village, it had been one 9-year-old girl. Then somebody widened the order to include everyone. Kalen dropped his axe when he teleported. Slaughter, imitation grade, market value 5,000 gold. Plus about 600 gold of custom military gear off the rest of them, which is when I introduced contribution points, through Elder Silas, because a system announced by a sergeant lands better than one announced by a lord. Kill, capture, or defeat a level 1 professional, 1 point. 1 point buys 2 gold of equipment at market price, or 1 gold in cash. Gold cannot buy points. Points cannot be traded. Injury and death earn extra points, and those belong to the man personally, not his family, not his squad, him. I put that clause in before I had a single captain who would have done it, and Eleanor asked me why, in private, and was slightly hurt. I told her the truth, which is that I was not writing a rule for her. I was writing a rule for the man who gets her job in 9 years, when she has been promoted twice and is 100 kilometers away, and for the man who gets his job after him, and for the version of my territory that has 40,000 soldiers, a court, and no living memory of any of us. A rule you write for the people you trust is decoration. A rule is only load-bearing if it was written for the person you have not met yet. She thought about that on the way out, and came back an hour later with 3 more clauses. And the clause that made every officer in the room look up. A commander is docked 3 times over for a casualty, so no captain of mine will ever be able to feed his men into a gap to buy himself a bonus. Everything public, everything calculated in real time on a board at the gate. Elder Silas finished with the line I gave him and delivered it better than I would have. The harder you work, the stronger your lord will become. The construction of Mage Tower and Floating City will all depend on you. Kyra wanted to keep the kobolds. Daddy, they seem to listen to me a lot. They did. We would come back to that. We marched on the slaver camp to finish the job and found it already finished. A dozen trolls had got there first. The camp was burning. Every slaver in it was dead, and they were eating Brendan alive at the gate while one of them held up his head and roared at us. Every soldier I had wanted to charge, my luck was sitting at 0 and going nowhere good. It's too dangerous and there's no reward, I said. We won't do a losing business. The cover story was that Sterling had spotted signals. The rear rank became the front rank, and we walked out backwards. A dozen more trolls came out of the woods behind the first dozen and stood there and decided, for their own reasons, not to follow. Let me be precise about what they saw, because the shame was earned, and I engineered it. A dozen trolls in a camp they had come to burn, doing to a man exactly what that man's employers had been doing to villages for 2 years. And 100 armed soldiers 20 meters away, in formation, at a full stop, being told to walk backwards. Nobody argued. Bay Territory soldiers do not argue with a movement order. That is drilled in before anything else is. But I heard the sound 100 men make when they obey an order they hate, and it is not silence, it is a kind of scraping. Elder Silas took them the long way home and did not speak to any of them. Then, for 3 days, he let them talk about it in the barracks, without once telling them they had done the right thing. On the 4th day, he stood up at the end of a training session and said one paragraph. That the Lord had been right, that they would all have gone in and about 30 of them would not have come out, and that the reason it still felt wrong was that they were soldiers now and had not been 6 weeks ago. Then he said, and this is the part that landed, that if they wanted to be the kind of unit that can walk into a dozen trolls and come back out, the path to that runs through him, starting at dawn. Enlistment in the extra training sessions went from 11 men to 104 overnight. The men felt relief for about 10 minutes and shame for the next 3 days, which was exactly the fuel Elder Silas needed, and he spent it well. In the carriage on the way back, I taught Kyra management. Pick the smartest kobolds, pick the most obedient ones, give them real power over the rest, let them do the running. A species with no autonomy of its own will accept hard methods and turn into a competent tool, and the moment you have competent tools, you stop needing to be present. She thought about this for a while, and then asked if the kobolds could dig her a room. That evening, Eliza ate 2 white loaves, a pound of croaker, and a bowl of bone broth, and then sat with her hands on her stomach, worried she had overeaten and would be in trouble. Cassandra next to her ate so fast she choked, and Eliza pushed the soup over without being asked. Don't rush, eat slowly. Butler Arthur said we have plenty of food. And Cassandra, to herself, quietly, in a voice I was not supposed to hear, is this what it feels like to be full? It's wonderful. I have made a great many cold decisions in 2 lives, and I would like it noted that I went back to the study afterward and did the following 2 things immediately. Told Byron Reed to advertise in Blood Moon City, 50 gold bounty for every live troll delivered to Bay Village, and offered settlers 50 acres of permanent lease for every 500 acres they reclaimed. Arthur nailed all of it to the village notice board next to the recruitment terms. Lift 100 kilos of stone. Run 10 kilometers under load. Pass, and you are a reserve soldier at 5 silver a month with a bed and board, 4 hours training, and 4 hours work. Survive a month, and you are official at 20 silver. Most of the village failed the stone on the first day. Sterling's entire feedback was, go back and eat more. 4 shops opened with a per-family purchase cap so nobody could corner anything, and the phrase going round the wells that week was, praise be to our Lord, which I did not order and did not stop. Then Kyra's panel grew a plus sign. Talent upgrade available. 3,000 experience and 300 fate coins. I bought it before I finished reading it. A black ring of time appeared on her back, and when I looked at it directly, my attention went into it and did not come out for a moment. My knowledge stat went up by 10 points on the strength of looking at it. Talent, True Dragon Bloodline, level 1. She promptly cut her own paw and dripped blood onto the foreheads of 4 kobolds. 2 of them screamed and died. Not all lives can withstand the backlash of changing one's fate. The other 2 stood up different. 1 meter 9, scaled, and no longer a kobold in any useful sense. Dragonborn Kobold, level 6 warrior, 26 extra attribute points, feats insight and magic scales. The other one came out a level 6 warlock with mana tide, multicast, and mana leech. Kira named them herself, and her reasoning was airtight. Since you're a bit stronger, let's call you Iron Maw. You'll have to dig up lots and lots of gold for me. You're a bit thinner, so I'll call you Shadow Claw. You'll have to dig up lots of gems for me in the future. I did not tell her to kill anybody. I want to be clear about that. And I also want to be clear that I watched 2 kobolds die on a table and said nothing. She cut her own paw and put a drop on 4 foreheads because she had decided on her own at 4 months old that 4 was the right number to try. 2 of them came apart screaming inside about 11 seconds. Not all lives can withstand the backlash of changing one's fate. Kira looked at the 2 that had stopped moving, and then at the 2 that were standing up taller, and she was quiet for a while. Then she asked me whether the 2 that died had been the weaker ones. I said probably. She said, then next time I will pick better ones, and went to name the survivors. That is a 4-month-old creature learning selection pressure in real time from a sample of 4, and it is the correct lesson, and it is also not the only lesson available, and I did not offer her the other one. I have thought about that evening more than I have thought about most of the battles. They kowtowed. Then they walked out, beat the 4 strongest kobolds in the camp in front of everyone, and had command of several hundred of them inside 10 minutes. Kira fell asleep on my arm during the ceremony. By morning, the village was watching kobolds dig its drainage ditches, and had decided this was normal. I should explain what an arcanist actually is, because everything I do from here runs on it. A mage draws on the weave. The elves taught humans the path, and they taught it to buy allies against the orcs, not out of kindness. A mage prepares a fixed set of spells during meditation, and then that is what he has for the day. Run out of fireball, and you are a man in a robe. 2,000 years ago, a man called Ion built something else. An arcanist casts anything he has ever learned, anytime he wants, as long as he has mana. That is the whole difference, and it is the entire difference. 1100 years ago, Zarthus broke the legendary ceiling and became the first Grand Arcanist. 129 years ago, he put a city in the sky. Lysander became a Grand Arcanist at 22. There are 4 schools: Elemental, which was mine, and whose 13th ring spell I used to kill 3 gods. Life, which is Zarthus's, and which is why he is 1200 years old, and there is a persistent rumor that the orc race is one of his experiments that got out. Magic Network, which built the floating city, and where Lysander is currently building an entirely new shape of the weave itself. And space-time, which is demiplanes, storage belts, and prophecy, and which quietly holds more than half the Empire's actual territory in dimensions nobody can point at. I had enough saved to buy 1 inheritance. Why choose only 1? Flesh and Blood, Feats Analysis Level 1. Look at a target's feats. Derive the training method that produced them. Learn it. Magic Network, Activation and Granting Level 1. Wake a consciousness inside an object. This is the foundation of legendary war golems. 1,000 experience and 300 fate coins each. Feats Analysis is the one no player in my old life ever had, and I need you to understand why it matters. It means I can mass produce elite professionals. We can start experimenting tomorrow, I said to nobody. Who should we choose as the first test subject? 300 kilometers away, in the slums of Blood Moon City, a bird flew into the lightning wards on a white tower and cooked in midair, and 2 children got to it before anyone else. The older one was called Ren. He had a rusted dagger he sharpened himself, and he made his living in the sewers. The younger one was Xiao, 9 years old and light enough to carry, and their door code was 3 knocks and a bark. He gave her most of the bird. She asked him not to go down to the 2nd level of the sewers. He said he would not, and he was walking toward it when a big, slow, loyal boy named Gavin grabbed him by the collar and dragged him to a hiring notice instead. Hundreds of carts, 1,000 people, a place called Bay Village, 300 kilometers away, 5 days on the road. Back home, Arthur asked me the question butlers eventually ask. My lord, isn't the order for everyone to remain loyal to you? Loyalty cannot be shouted out, nor can it be obtained through forced brainwashing. As long as I do better than all the lords, they will be my strongest supporters. That is the public version. The private version is that loyalty is not purchased, it grows out of shared interests, and the difference between those 2 sentences is the difference between a territory and a labor camp. Then I built the Feats Factory, and this is the machine that makes everything else in this story possible. I put Eleanor in the ring against Elder Silas. Eleanor, Level 2 Knight, Valor, Riding Mastery, Weapon Mastery 2, Skilled Commander, Aura Boost. Elder Silas, Level 4 Warrior, Sword Mastery 2, Defensive Stance 3, Battle Veteran 3, Weakness Judgment 2. Assessment, a seasoned veteran who has seen it all. I read the acquisition recipe for defensive stance straight off the data like a man reading a cake tin. 3 hours of defensive theory, 3 hours against an opponent 2 levels higher, 5 hours against 1 level higher, 5 hours against equals, 8 hours against 3 lower, 3 hours of discussion afterward. That is it. That is the whole secret that takes veterans a decade, and the reason it takes a decade is contained entirely in one sentence Elder Silas said to Rowan that morning without thinking about it. I can do it, but I don't know why. You should practice more. So I interrogated him for half an hour. Every guard, every shift of the back foot. Why the left elbow drops when the strike comes overhand. He got annoyed, then interested, then genuinely thoughtful, and I wrote the manual and recorded the whole thing on a shadow crystal. What took Elder Silas years, Eleanor learned in 3 days. Then she learned Battle Veteran in 3 more. I should say what that half hour of interrogation was actually like, because Elder Silas has told the story since, and he tells it wrong on purpose to make himself sound better. I asked him to hold a guard and not move. Then I asked why the left elbow drops when a strike comes overhand. He said it just does. I asked him to do it with the elbow up. He did. The strike went through his guard. I asked why. He said because the elbow has to drop. I asked why. He got annoyed. That is the useful part. An annoyed veteran will keep talking to prove you are wrong. 9 minutes into proving I was wrong, he said it without noticing. The elbow drops so the shoulder can turn. The shoulder has to turn or the weight sits on the back foot. And the back foot is where you push from. There it is. That is defensive stance. That is 30 years of a man's life, and it took 9 minutes of irritating him to get it out, and he had never once said it out loud to anybody, including himself. Then I made him do it 40 more times while I wrote. Elder Silas stood at the fence 3 days later and watched a 20-year-old absorb his entire life in under a week and said, very quietly, "This pace of progress is too fast." In that 1 week, the soldiers went from 105 to 150, professionals to 40, 15 promoted to level 2, with Rowan, obviously, first. The cost was food. 3 times the consumption, and 1/10 of everything Byron Reed brought me, gone in 7 days. Becoming stronger costs a lot of money. I would like that carved somewhere. Byron Reed's caravan came up the road a week later and met Rowan's squad jogging out in tens to escort it. He tried to press a gold coin into Rowan's hand. It is what you do. It is what you have always done, everywhere, to every soldier at every gate on this continent. Rowan pushed it back. You must never do such a thing in Lord Julian's territory in the future, or you will be locked up in jail. Byron Reed told me later that nothing else on that entire journey shook him as badly. Not the wall, not the golems, not the dragon. An ordinary soldier at a gate refused a gold coin. Then he saw the road, and the road had kobolds on it in little hoods carrying baskets of gravel paving. Then he saw the wall, 5 meters of it. It had not existed 16 days earlier. At the registration desk, they took his people's names, origins, families, whether they could read, and a room number. Then they were handed a job menu. Common labor, 20 copper a day and 2 full meals. Technical work, 1 silver. 2 years of work with taxes paid, and you become a member of Bay Village with 10 mu of permanent land and the right to buy a house. Xiao ran through their assigned house, shrieking about 3 rooms, 2 beds, new blankets, new clothes, and 6 whole ceramic bowls that were not chipped. Ren stood in the doorway and did not go in for a while. He told me this himself, much later, when he was a squad captain and had had enough wine to be honest. He said he stood in that doorway waiting for the catch, because in the slums of Blood Moon City there is always a catch, and the catch always arrives about 4 days after you relax. He went through the house looking for it. He checked the roof beams for rot. He checked whether the well was shared. He asked a neighbor twice what the rent was, and the neighbor twice failed to understand the question, because there is no rent. The house comes with the 2 years of work. Then he sat down on a bed with a mattress in it and could not think of anything else to check. His sister went through all 6 bowls one at a time, turning each one over looking for the chip. There is a specific thing that happens to people in their first week at Bay Territory, and I have watched it happen about 40,000 times now. It is not gratitude. Gratitude is fast, and it is cheap, and it wears off. It is that they stop planning for the disaster. That takes between 4 days and 3 months, depending on what they came from. And the day it happens, you have a citizen, and until it happens, you have a guest who is waiting to be thrown out. At the bottom of the notice board, under the crime list that ended with the words, "All violators will be executed, imprisoned, fined, and expelled," there were 2 more lines. Current bounty, capture a troll, 50 gold coins per troll, and all children under the age of 10 can enjoy literacy education at the kindergarten, 3 meals a day. Byron Reed's report card was better than I had any right to expect. 4 intermediate blacksmiths, 6 tailors, 2 barbarian horse breeders bought for 10 gold total, a senior stock breeder for 100, 12 Eastern chefs. All told, 53 life skill workers, 119 manufacturing, 42 professionals, including 1 level 12, 6,500 gold spent, 6,000 saved against the budget I gave him. Of the 6,000 gold coins saved, you can take 3,000. He tried to refuse it. That is the part I did not expect. He said the 6,000 was saved against the Lord's budget and therefore belonged to the Lord, and that he had already been paid his commission, and that he would take 500 as a courtesy if I insisted. I did not insist. I explained, if I keep the 6,000, the next quarter Byron Reed buys carefully. He gets me the best price he can without taking any risk, because risk is his and reward is mine. And a careful merchant is a merchant who never gambles on a distressed seller or a bulk lot or a family that needs to move goods before winter. If I give him 3,000 of it, then next quarter Byron Reed gambles, because half of every gamble that comes off is his. That is a 3,000 gold investment in a man's willingness to be aggressive with somebody else's money. And it has paid me back somewhere north of 40 times since. I watched a 36-year-old merchant go pale, then red, then sit down on a crate. Then I gave him 400 bottles of blood revitalization potion and told him it works better than a novice healing potion at 60% of the price. If you can sell them all within 4 days, the Lord will provide you with 1,000 bottles every half month. He pulled a dagger to test it on his own arm right there in the courtyard, and Arthur took it off him mid-motion without appearing to move. Don't try to be clever in front of the Lord. New standing orders. Bring me slum dwellers, refugees, and slaves. 10 silver a head, old, young, or woman, I do not care which. Bring me a mid-level druid. Bring me books and scrolls. Any books, any scrolls. Arthur worried out loud that somebody would reverse engineer the potion formula. Even if they know the recipe, they'll never be able to learn how to make it. That was not arrogance. That was a man who owns 800 trolls talking to a man who does not. The welcome banquet was theater, and I paid for every prop. 20 tables, white bread, hills of meat, Eastern stir-fries nobody in this village had ever smelled, half-meter cod, bone broth, all of it for the new hires, and all of it in the open air, behind a fence, guarded by soldiers, watched by every person in Bay Village who had not yet earned a seat. Then Kyra appeared on my shoulder, and nobody saw how she got there, and behind her came Iron Maw and Shadowclaw and several hundred kobolds in a neat column. My speech was short, a house and 10 acres each. Your family may follow you. Here, there will be no tolerance for crime or exploitation. Here, everyone's hard work will be rewarded. Here, wisdom, experience, and technology will be given the utmost respect. If you have a problem, you can walk up to any guard and say so. Then I turned to the fence and said, do not be discouraged. You can join in as little as 3 months. Here is the trick nobody spotted. Half the talent Byron Reed brought me was over 60 years old. I did not buy their hands. Their hands are finished. I bought their experience and their obligation to hand it to apprentices, and I paid a premium for it. And every young man behind that fence looked at a 70-year-old tailor eating roast pork and thought the same sentence. If these old guys can do it, why can't we? Arthur's ambitions changed permanently that night. He had come out here planning to manage a territory. He went to bed planning to manage a floating city. Bay Village stopped being a village while I was not looking. A farm, a water-powered forge on the Silver Moon, camps and sentry posts, a logging camp, a timber plant, a linen works, herb processing, 10 sites at once, and none of them finished. The walls got filled with soil, reed ash, and alchemical minerals, which makes them resist low-level elemental spells, which nobody thinks to do because nobody expects to be shot at with magic in a fishing village. Kobolds dug the sewers before we built the 2-story houses over them, which is the single most valuable thing anyone in this story ever did, and nobody noticed it for a year. 4 streets. An adventurer's Lauren going up, a weapon shop already ringing at dawn, an inn, a tavern with a banner. I hired a warrior instructor named Gunther for over 1,000 gold. Penelope was already a level 2 druid and kept mentioning her master, who she would not describe. Then the land rush. We cut a canal off the Silver Moon and burned the reeds in fenced squares of 1 acre each, and an old farmer, who turned out to be Caleb's father, asked me the terms 3 times because he did not believe them. 2,500 mu is the target for a 100-man team. 10% of everything above target belongs to the team. Permanent, heritable lease. Tax fixed at 20% forever. Top 3 teams get bonus land. That old man's name was Kale, and he had been farming the same 11 mu since he was 9 years old. 11 mu. His father had 11 mu. His son, who is Caleb, left for the outpost because 11 mu does not divide. He asked me the terms 3 times, and the 3rd time he asked them slowly, like a man reading a contract in a language he has only heard spoken. 2,500 mu is the team target. Above target, the team keeps 10% of everything. Permanent, heritable, yours and your children's. Tax fixed at 20%, and it does not move, ever. Not in a bad year, not in a war, not if I take a wound and need money. He got stuck on permanent. He kept coming back to it. Is it permanent if the Lord changes? Is it permanent if the Empire comes? Is it permanent in writing? Yes, yes, and it is nailed to the gate in letters big enough to read from a cart. He made me repeat the part about above target twice. worked out that even 2,000 extra mu still nets his team 200, turned around and roared at his own people that nobody was going home until they had cleared 10 acres that day. Then he came back an hour later, in front of everybody, and asked one more thing, which is the question that has followed me around this territory for 4 months. Why? Not why the land, why him? Why a man with 11 mu and no teeth? I gave him the honest answer, because I had already learned that the honest answer works better here than the noble one. Because a tenant farms what he is told, and a landowner farms what will grow, and I would like 10,000 people making their own decisions about my soil, instead of one bailiff making all of them badly. He thought that was hilarious. He is still telling people. He has improved it. Meanwhile, Rowan, who now had his own squad under Elder Silas's standing order, was in the gloomy forest. The order was, your mission is to protect all personnel and bring them back safely. This is more important than the bounty. He found 20 or 30 gnolls slaughtering wild kobolds. 2 meters, 130 kilos, dark green skin, dark red manes, ambushers, slavers, and they eat people. Challenge level 4. And among them, one wearing a strap of bones, casting illusory sound. Gnoll Watcher. Advanced feats. Quick casting, level 1, 50% faster casting. Quick casting is the prerequisite for instant casting. In my old life, I paid tens of thousands of gold for it. We must capture Gnoll alive. Your feats are great. Now they're mine. Iron Maw cleaved through 2 Gnoll warriors in one exchange. Kyra banished the Watcher out of time in the middle of its casting, which I want you to appreciate, because that spell will finish itself in a month somewhere in a cage. 2 fireballs and the shield wall did the rest, and 107 gnolls stayed there. Then Kyra, entirely on her own, with no hint from me at all, went and dealt with the kobold mind. Her thinking, verbatim, if possible, subdue them. We need more kobolds to work together. If they don't obey, get rid of them. This territory is ours. 462 adult kobolds, 385 cubs, and 1,042 eggs have joined your forces. Kobold Mine joins the territory. 300 fed kobolds with new picks produce 3,000 kilos of medium-grade iron ore a day. 300,000 kobolds would produce 600,000 kilos a day of the best ore on the coast. I said the doctrine out loud, in the yard, where the soldiers could hear it, because it was going to matter later. From now on, any creature, race, or individual that benefits our territory and does not harm the interests of others will be able to enjoy such treatment. Now let me tell you about Lauren, because Lauren saved everyone by accident. He is in his 40s. He has 1 arm. He has 5 children, 2 of whom have professional talent and are therefore slowly bleeding him to death. He sold himself to Byron Reed for 180 gold to be a trainer, and Elder Silas conned him inside a day into guarding the lumberyard for 2 extra silver. I will let him tell it. My name is Lauren, and I'm panicking right now. Ahead of me are hundreds of gnolls, and they eat people, and they like to eat them alive. He had chased 4 fleeing gnolls for the ear bounty, 2 or 3 gold each, which is a month of his daughter's tuition. He climbed a tree to wait them out. 500 gnolls arrived underneath him and split into 2 flanking groups. He still had the severed ears in his shirt. He burned a fireball scroll to warn us, and his reasoning was the most Lauren thing I have ever heard. If the Lord were alive, given his generosity, he would surely have given my 2 daughters a substantial sum of compensation. If they die, I won't survive anyway. The gnolls chopped his tree down. He raised the dagger to his own throat. Kyra banished him out of time about a second before it mattered. I burned 100 gold communication scroll to reach the camp, and while it was going off, I had the small pleasure of remembering that the spell communicator, the thing every adventurer in this world will one day carry in a pocket, has not been invented yet either. Its inventor becomes a grand arcanist. They nickname him the Communication Master. He is currently about 11 years old. We fell back in stages with fireball ambushes at every prepared point. Sterling played bait, badly and deliberately, with 1 arrogant arrow at a time. Shadowclaw put a fireball into a knot of them and killed 20, and Mana Leech refunded most of the cost, which is when I decided I liked Shadowclaw. 80 soldiers behind 1 half-built fence at the logging camp against 450 gnolls, plus 1,000 kobolds who were no help at all. So I reached into the cage, grabbed the Gnoll Watcher by the fur, and got to work. Feats analysis, level 1, insufficient. 2 skill points to level 2, 3 to level 3, 4 to level 4. Consume 3,000 points to learn advanced feats. Quick casting. I watched the model assemble in front of me, node by node, and I lost about 40 seconds of a siege standing there admiring it. Then I put my rapier through the Watcher and had the body thrown over the fence. That is Noel's last spellcaster, I told the wall. Their fighting spirit will decline rapidly. Elder Silas read it as a demonstration for the men, and he was exactly right. I was also deliberately keeping Kyra out of the fight, and every officer I had knew it, and none of them said so. On the edge of life and death, a battle of iron and blood. Only in this way can true warriors be forged. I stand by it. It still cost me 3 men. 30 minutes of shield and spear at a fence built for stacking logs. Blood revitalization potion kept men on their feet, who by every rule of this world should have gone down and stayed down, and the ones who saw that happen to the man beside them started fighting differently. Then the Gnoll barbarian nearly killed Elder Silas, took an arrow through the arm, and discovered ambition. I could see it arrive on his face. It is precisely because Gnoll Watcher is dead that I must demonstrate my power. I might become the new leader. Then he told his whole line to kill everyone and take the forest. 3 of my soldiers died in the next 4 minutes. My soul was aching from stacking too many high-grade feats into it too fast, which is a real cost nobody warns you about, and I had also just quietly lifted Mana Leech off Shadowclaw without asking. So I stopped hiding. Here is what an Arcanist with quick casting and Mana Leech actually is. Unlimited casts because Arcanist, 50% faster because quick casting, and mana comes back on every kill because Mana Leech. That is not a spellcaster, that is a battlefield turret with a fuel line running back into the enemy. 2 fireballs killed 20 and refunded 55 mana, which was the exact cost of the 2 fireballs. Then Magic Missile, level 3, 6 missiles a cast, at intelligence 24, and the left flank of a Gnoll army simply emptied out. I noticed something on the way. Mana Leech quietly eats about 30% of the experience those kills would have given me. I ran the numbers between volleys and decided a dead enemy is worth more than a number, and kept going. Then I stopped on purpose, well before I had to, because 150 people were watching. Shadowclaw put the last fireball into the Gnoll barbarian. Except that is the summary, and the summary is a lie of compression, so let me put you on the fence for 4 minutes. The logging camp fence was chest high and built to stop logs rolling, not gnolls climbing. 80 men behind it, 450 of them in front of it, in the dark, moving in from 3 sides and howling in a way that is designed to make your hands stop working. Elder Silas had the center. He is 61 years old, and he was on the fence line with a machete because there was nobody else to put there. The rotation was Eleanor's, and it was brutal in a very specific way. Front rank fights for 90 seconds. 90 seconds, not 2 minutes, because a man's arms are honest at 90 seconds and start lying to him at 120. Then he steps back, drinks, and the man behind him steps up. They held that rhythm for half an hour, with gnolls coming over the top of them. Blood revitalization potion is the reason there were 80 men there and not 50. A man goes down with his arm open to the bone. Somebody pours 40 silver worth of troll into his mouth, and 11 seconds later, he is standing up and swearing. I watched a recruit called Dorian get put down twice and come back twice, and the 3rd time, he did not go down at all, because by then he had understood something about himself that no amount of drill can teach you. Then the Gnoll barbarian came over the fence, 2 meters 40. He hit Elder Silas's guard, and the guard held, and the fence did not. And my 61-year-old cook went backward off it into the mud with a 2-handed club coming down after him. An arrow went through the barbarian's arm. Eleanor, 40 meters away, mid-command, without looking like she had stopped talking. And I watched ambition arrive on that Gnoll's face in real time. I could read it off him like a printed page. It is precisely because Gnoll Watcher is dead that I must demonstrate my power. I might become the new leader. That is what ended it in the end. Not the fence and not the potions. He stopped fighting a battle and started auditioning. Kill them all, and this forest will be ours. 3 of my men died in the 4 minutes after he said that. Their names were on the pyre 2 days later. I am not going to pretend the arithmetic was clean. The honest version is that if I had opened up 10 minutes earlier, they would be alive, and 40 of my soldiers would not have learned what they learned that night. I have made that trade before. I will make it again. I have never once enjoyed it. 367 gnolls, 16,500 experience, 2 skill points, plus 2,002 more for a resounding victory against overwhelming odds, and 820 fate coins. We buried the gnoll bodies deep because the moon is patient. 4 of my men were dead. The kobolds got new instructions that night, read straight off the data panel, because it turns out the game will simply tell you how to farm a species if you ask it politely. Clean living quarters raise their lifespan and their health. Centralizing the eggs raises the hatch rate. I hand drew an underground complex and copied it with a spell. Iron Maw and Shadowclaw both studied it upside down for a while, admitted they could not read, and promised to make everyone behave anyway. I want to defend the kobolds for a paragraph because that line is unfair and I keep saying it. Every drainage ditch in Bay City was dug by kobolds, every sewer under every street, the road to Troll Valley, the tunnels that put 500 of them under a hillside in 20 covered wagons, the underground farms, the foundations of the academy. Nobody on this continent uses them for any of it because a kobold is 1 meter 20, terrified of everything, and has an intelligence score of 4, and the standard practice when you find a nest is to burn it. Here is what 4 intelligence actually means in the field. It means a kobold cannot plan. It does not mean a kobold cannot dig, or count to 11, or hold a line if the line is a tunnel, or hatch 400 eggs a month if somebody puts the eggs in a warm room instead of leaving them in a wet cave. Every problem the kobolds have is a supervision problem, and supervision is the cheapest thing I own. Iron Maw and Shadowclaw were level 6 inside a week, and they run 12,000 of them now, and I have never once had to intervene. Kobold average intelligence is 4. Perhaps fools are just lucky. Then we buried our own, and this is the part of the story where I stop being clever. Eleanor read 4 names over the pyre: Hajira, Frel, Kukor, Rachinin, a hero's tomb in the center of the village, their deeds written into the historical record of Bay Village, which had never had a historical record before that afternoon. 5 gold immediately to each family, 20 mu of permanent farmland, 10 silver a month, forever, and the territory raises their children to adulthood. Old Sterling stood at the back with his hat in his hands and remembered the other version of this ceremony, the one he had been to 11 times. 11. He counted them out for Elder Silas afterward on his fingers, twice, because he lost his place the first time. 2 of them were his own sons. Compensation? What compensation? Sacrificing yourself for the Nethril Empire is your honor. Grandpa Village Chief. Where did my dad go? He had watched Grand Arcanists lift an entire city into the sky. He had also watched his neighbors lash their farm tools together with wood, because iron is for other people. And in 60 years, not one of those arcanists ever came down to clear the kobolds out of the hills. I want to put those 2 facts next to each other properly, because Sterling did, standing at that pyre, and it is the whole reason he handed me his village. 129 years ago, a man named Zarthus put a city into the sky. Not a tower, a city. It is up there now. You can see it from the Carl Plain on a clear day, a shape that should not be a shape, and the people who live under it have been farming with wooden tools for 4 generations because iron is allocated centrally and it is allocated upward. The Empire can move a city. It has never once moved a kobold nest out of a hillside because the hillside had a village next to it. Not because it cannot. It could do it in an afternoon with a bored apprentice. Because there is no line in any ledger anywhere in Cevedon where the value of 2,000 fishermen is written down, so there is nothing for the cost to be weighed against, so the question never gets asked, so nobody is even being cruel. That is the part that took me 2 lifetimes to understand. Nobody up there is twirling anything. The arithmetic simply has no place to put you. Sterling figured all of that out on his own, without ever leaving the Eastern Province, sometime around his 40th year. Then he lived with it for another 20. Then a boy in a borrowed body paid 5 gold and 20 mu of land to the family of a dead cart driver in front of his whole village. He told me afterward what he decided standing there. I'm completely smitten. 2 adventurers watching from the fence agreed on something else. Not even the honor-obsessed Lordaeron Empire pays like that. Ren took the reserve soldier exam that week. The rogue test is an infiltration course. Tunnels, a sandbag, patrol routes, buried traps, and a white line painted on the ground at the end. 13 men left, 30 seconds on the clock, and 1 hunched figure sitting with his back to the finish line, doing nothing. 12 men broke cover and ran for it. He counted to 26. 12 men broke and ran at about second 4, which is what the course is designed to make you do, because there is a finish line and there is a clock, and there is a hunched figure with his back to you, who has obviously not noticed. The hunched figure was Lauren. One arm, a sack of chalk dust, and 40 years of being the man nobody looks at twice. He got 11 of them across the back of the neck with a chalked stick as they went past. The 12th he let run and then hit at the line, which I thought was unnecessary and Lauren thought was educational. Ren came out of the shadow at second 27 with 3 seconds on the clock, along the drainage cut on the left, on his stomach, in water. Lauren never turned around. Afterward, in front of the 12, Lauren said the only line of the whole exam: if you want to become a rogue, patience and concealment are your greatest assets for survival. Then he added, to Ren specifically, that 3 seconds is showing off and that a professional leaves 11, and Ren has never once let him forget that he passed, and Lauren has never once let him forget the 3 seconds. If you want to become a rogue, patience and concealment are your greatest assets for survival. That is not my line. That is the line the examiner said afterward to the 12. Then the troll bounty landed in Blood Moon City, and the world came to my door. Freya's coalition, 30 adventurers, arrived using Sterling's own method, which Bay Village had sold them at the gate for 5 gold a kit. Reese as bait with a goblin bomb, a pit under leaves, arrows to bleed it, never melee, never ever melee. A hemp net snare on the way out. 3 trolls, 1 morning, nobody hurt. And when they dragged them back, the service center paid out 150 gold on the spot, in the open, counted onto the table in front of 200 people. Is it really that simple? It's really that simple. A beginner adventuring task pays 3 or 4 gold. A good intermediate one rarely clears 30. The forest emptied of adventurers inside 2 hours. Arthur came to find me looking worried. They don't really think capturing trolls is that easy, do they? Sterling shrugged and answered before I could. There are always some fools who like to act stupidly. In any case, the Lord's goal is simply to attract more adventurers. 2 days, 20 trolls, over 1,000 gold paid out, 2 adventurers dead. We also started publishing every scrap of adventure information we gathered, free, on a board, and punishing anyone who harvested a magical plant without leaving seed. Both of those things confused people more than the bounty did. By the end of that week, I had 7 trolls in the cellar, and the cellar had developed a culture. The 3 new arrivals were shouting at their chains. The 4 veterans glanced up, looked at each other, and went back to their books. Yes, books. When did trolls learn to read? The kobolds came down with buckets of live fish and poured them into a funnel that fed straight into the newcomers' mouths, and the newcomers stopped shouting immediately, because being force-fed live fish is better treatment than any of them had received as cubs. 2 of the veterans exchanged a look I would pay money to have on a crystal. These poor guys probably think this is paradise right now. In a few days, they will realize just how expensive it is to be well fed. Forget about these idiots. Get back to your studies. Shadowclaw, who I had assigned to teach them common, wrote all of this down and brought it to me with an expression of deep confusion. His report was 4 pages, and I have kept it. The first troll to learn a word learned the word fish for obvious reasons. The second learned the word more. The third, who is called Craghide, and who I now suspect is the most dangerous thing in my cellar, learned the word why, and then used it for 11 consecutive days about everything. Why fish? Why chain? Why book? Why blood? Shadowclaw answered the first 3. He came to me about the 4th. I went down and told Craghide the truth, because I have found that lying to something that is going to live for 200 years is a poor investment. I told him, because your body makes a thing that saves human lives, and it makes it faster than we can take it, and it costs you a meal, and it costs us 50 silver, and we do not intend to stop. And then I told him the second half, which he had not asked for, that if a troll can read, and a troll can write, and a troll can brew, then somewhere down that road, there is a version of this arrangement where the trolls make the potion themselves, and I buy it from them. He thought about that for a long time. Trolls think slowly, and this is not the same as thinking badly. Then he asked whether that version had chains in it, and I said no, and he asked when, and I said I did not know, and he went back to his book. I have not lied to him since, and I do not intend to. Partly because it is the right thing, mostly because he is going to outlive me by 150 years, and I would rather he remember it accurately. My reason for teaching trolls to read is simple, and I do not expect anyone to like it. In my old life, a player tamed a species, re-engineered it, and built the Knoll Legion, which was famous enough that an alliance of powers eventually got together and destroyed him for it. It can be done. And if I get it right, I may live to watch a troll brew its own blood revitalization potion. The Professional Training Academy opened in a converted warehouse. Small class, medium class, large class. Preschool, physical, skills. The catch, which nobody objected to, is 20 years of service for a trained professional. I deliberately hired young instructors rather than the old experts, and I will be honest about why. Young people are more malleable and more obedient. They just need to follow orders. All of which is only acceptable because of the second half of the sentence, which is that we can actually give them a bright future. And if that ever stops being true, the whole thing becomes something I would burn down myself. Arthur asked what happens to the 95% of children who have no professional talent at all, since the academy is built for the 5% who do. He asked it as an accounting question. It is the most important question anybody asked me all spring. The answer is that they go to the same building. Small class is preschool, and it is everybody under 6. Medium class is physical conditioning and letters and numbers, and it is everybody. Large class is trade skills, and it is everybody who does not test into the professional track, and it teaches forge work, cloth, brewing, animals, accounts, and the operation of a golem. I put no gate anywhere in that building except the one onto the professional track. Failing that gate costs you nothing. A 14-year-old who can run a harvesting golem and read a ledger is worth more to me than a mediocre level 2 warrior, and will live 40 years longer. Eliza teaches the small class. She has 11 intelligence and a 50% chance of being a beginner mage, and last month she taught 206 children to read. 50 gold bonus per professional trained, above a 70% pass rate. By then, the town at Rest had started to look like something. Stone-lined drains, covered walkways under the eaves so you could cross the market in the rain. 30 shops on deliberately thin margins, selling everything from furniture to sewing needles. People who had been counting fish heads 3 weeks earlier were buying chairs. The shops were the part that surprised me, because I had budgeted for them as a loss, and they were not one. 30 of them by the end of that month, on deliberately thin margins, selling furniture, boots, cloth, pots, sewing needles, lamp oil, paper, soap, and 4 kinds of pickle. Here is why that matters, and why every other lord gets it exactly backwards. A man with a wage and nothing to buy is a man saving up to leave. Give me a man with a wage and a shop full of things he wants, and I have a man who bought a chair last week and is thinking about a bed. He has a reason to be here on a Tuesday. He compares this year to last year in objects, not in feelings, and I have put the objects inside his own house where he can see them. Every copper he spends comes back to me anyway, because I own the factory that made the chair, and the shop that sold it, and the wagon that brought it, and the road under the wagon. I did not build shops to make money. I built them so that the money I pay out has somewhere to go that is not out of the gate. Taverns full of rich adventurers. And exactly one trade Bay Village did not have, which was the obvious one, which adventurers found frankly unbelievable and forgave immediately because of the food. Byron Reed came back from his next run dreading a punishment. To land one master-level breeder, he had bought 1,000 barbarian slaves. 800 of them were old people, women, and children. They produced nothing. Nobody takes barbarian slaves because barbarian slaves are famous for burning down the place that bought them. At the gate, every weapon in his caravan was checked into numbered storage, and I watched 3 arrogant adventurers hand over enchanted swords without a murmur. Elder Silas walked up to the largest tattooed man in the column, a barbarian called Cragul, who could have folded him in half, and spoke to him with no hostility whatsoever. See them? Cart pushers, vagrants, adventurers, even former kobolds. They will not encounter unexpected dangers as long as they abide by the rules of the territory. And Arthur greeted the old woman at the front of the column with a full bow. Lyra, 112 years old, level 12 high shaman, a master-level keeper of beasts, chief shaman of the Hotak clan of the Eastern Continent, and she breeds high-grade warhorses, camels, and Komodo dragons. I read her sheet and opened with the wrong sentence on purpose. It seems your battle with the Eastern Empire is quite intense. The blood went out of her face. How did you know? Terms. I bought you and I paid for you. 5 years of work at proper wages, with real food and real housing. After 5 years you may leave freely, but you leave with nothing you were given. Refuse the work and you owe me 1,000 gold, and you will work it off. Her instinct, which she told me about much later, was correct. The more generous the terms, the deeper the reason underneath them. She asked me one question at that first meeting, and it was the right one. Not what the work was, not what the food was. She asked what happened to the ones who could not work. The 800, the old, the women, the children who create nothing and eat every day. Every other lord she has ever been sold to answered that question with silence, and the silence meant the same thing every time. I told her they go on the register. They go to the kitchen, or the school, or the nursery. The ones too old for any of it sit with the children and talk to them. My territory pays for all of it out of the potion revenue. I am aware that is a cost. I have priced it. She asked why. I said a 112-year-old shaman who breeds Komodo dragons is worth 200,000 gold to me over 10 years, and she will not work for a man who let her grandchildren starve on the way in. I would rather buy her loyalty with grain now than try to buy it back later with gold. She said, so it is arithmetic. I said yes. She said, good. Arithmetic I can trust. Kindness runs out. Her instinct, which she told me about much later, was correct. The more generous the terms, the deeper the reason underneath them. I left her with the only piece of advice that mattered. You're nothing special, don't worry. If you're willing to stay in Bay Village longer, then you should really learn the common language. Then Arthur brought me the price sheets from 3 markets, and I stopped enjoying myself. Wheat up 1 copper a pound. Spellcasting materials up 2 silver a pound. Production materials down across the board. Divination is not rare in this world. Somebody with a profit on payroll had already started buying for next year. Stores, 4.4 million pounds of wheat, which feeds 22,000 people for a year, about 5,000 pounds of spell materials. Plan, 1,500 new people a week for 6 months, 35,000 by first snow. And it will not be enough because of what comes next year, which is orcs. Byron Reed's new standing order took him about a minute to read and about a week to recover from. 5,000 bottles of blood revitalization potion a week. A fixed purchase of 2 million pounds of wheat and 10 heavy crossbows deducted from proceeds. 2,000 refugees a week out of the south. Buy slaves. Recruit druids. And one line at the bottom that he stared at longest. You must spend these 2,500 gold coins as much as possible. Also this, which is the actual job. Observe Bay Village. Find its shortcomings and its weaknesses for me. Then you will know what to buy next. He spent an afternoon walking the fish shop, which now sells sardines, croaker, cod, grouper, and tuna all year round if you can beat the fishmen off the water, and the tailor shop, which had 4 kinds of thread. And I watched him work out that he was not a supplier, he was a limb. Then I built a golem, and I built it badly 3 times. The recipe: 500 pounds of clean clay, dried and powdered, 2 shards of magic white crystal, pure water, 50 grams of mithril at 1 gold a gram, which you cannot buy on an open market at any price, and a 20 gold earth element crystal as the core, all of it cast in a mold. The first one popped, the second turned to ash, and I gave the ash to the kobolds as a bonus. The third exploded at 70% because 1 mana node sat 2 millimeters out of place, and there was no redundancy buffer to absorb it. Somewhere in the middle of the second failure, the model finally came clear in my head. A clay golem's body is a machine. The energy core is the power source and the engine. The mana nodes are the wiring and the partition controllers. The applied spell model is the processor. I want to describe the third failure properly because it is the one that taught me the thing. It got to 70% and then the whole torso went out sideways through the wall of the mold, and the shockwave took the workbench, and I spent an hour afterward on my knees with a lens working out why. 1 mana node, 2 millimeters out of true. In a spell, 2 millimeters is nothing, because a spell exists for 4 seconds and then stops. In a golem, the model runs for years. A node 2 millimeters off bleeds a fraction of a percent of throughput into the clay, every hour, forever. And I had built no buffer to absorb it. I had not built one because I did not know I needed one. I did not know I needed one because in the game, the golem simply appeared when the crafting bar filled. So I built a redundancy buffer. 3 of them, in a ring, sized deliberately too large. That is the difference between knowing a recipe and understanding a thing. And it is a difference I paid for 3 times at about 600 gold a go. The 4th one stood up. Then I used activation and granting on it, which costs 1,000 experience, and which let me see the entire internal mana structure at once. Watching that alone taught me more about crafting than building the thing had. It also lets you pick 1 upgrade. I picked Intelligence. Basic Construct to Mid-Tier Construct. Challenge level 4 to 6. Combat Endurance 2 hours to 6. I built 5 more. On the 6th, after I stopped feeding it, The spell model kept running. 10 mana, then 12. The data panel had nothing to say about it, which has happened to me exactly twice in 2 lives. So I spent a fate choice. Complete the Mutant Golem's perfect guidance, 2,000 experience and 200 fate coins, luck -3. Or let it fail, luck +2. I paid. What stepped out of the mold was 1.80 meters and shaped like a person, with yellow glowing eyes and fingers that moved individually. It bowed. Great Master, thank you for giving me life. I will dedicate my life and loyalty to serving you wholeheartedly. Challenge level 8. Warlock, Intelligence 14. Fine Control, Earth Elemental Drain, which means it runs on 20 mana an hour when idle and never eats. It knew Light, Clean, and Mage's Hand without being taught, and it can build golems and brew potions by itself. I named him Summit. My magic item crafting jumped 20 points in one evening. I spent the next day dictating potion instructions to a construct. Keep stirring at a constant speed for 4 minutes and 32 seconds. At 5 minutes 16 seconds, add moonflower powder. He failed 4 times. On the 5th, he nailed it, and then he took over the entire production line, and I never touched a flask again. This is Arcanist, skilled at making and using tools. Even a tool is still a tool. Upstairs, Cassandra was writing dragon script by candlelight, while Kira slept next to her and talked in her sleep about food, and Alara sat in the corner sewing and watching her daughter with an expression I do not have the vocabulary for. Half a month of proper meals, and Cassandra's numbers were Knowledge 32, Meditation 21, Intelligence 15, and Luck back up to -1 from -5. I know exactly what that means. It means it will crawl back down to -5 the moment I stop paying attention. The luck number is the thing I have not solved, and it is the only open file on my desk that frightens me. -5 when I met her, -1 after half a month of food, warmth, a bed, a mother in the same room, and somebody telling her to go to sleep. That is not a coincidence, and it is not a metaphor. Whatever the fate attribute is measuring, it moved 4 points because a child stopped being hungry, which means it is not a curse. It is a reading. It is the world telling you what is loaded against a person right now, and most of what was loaded against a 9-year-old in a black robe was that she was starving and alone in a village that was afraid of her. And it means the version of her I remember was not born. The one who walks into a merchant city and takes it apart, kills 3 legendary arcanists, and then disappears out of history. Nobody was born into that. She was arrived at. 1 bad year at a time, by exactly the kind of neglect I have spent 4 months building a machine to prevent. I have not told her any of that, and I do not intend to. Her progress ticked up 1 point the instant she smiled at me, which I found unscientific and did not investigate. My rules for her were 3. Read spell scrolls now, not later. Ask me anything, anytime, even if I look busy. And be in bed by 9, because you are growing. She went away visibly panicking about how much more she would have to read during the day. Around then, Byron Reed worked out the thing about the economy and came to ask me about it because it was keeping him awake. I buy the entire output of every factory I own, myself, at price, regardless of demand. Ensure everyone has a job and help them adapt to their work as much as possible. He said, and I quote, "This is an unprecedented way of buying and selling. What exactly is the Lord thinking?" He is a very good merchant. He will get there. I toured the clothing factory that week and found one woman cutting an entire garment by herself, start to finish, and then the next woman doing the same, and so on down the row. No assembly line at all, even though every tool required already existed on the bench. Switching to line production would multiply that output 4 or 5 times. I did not do it. Before one's strength reaches a certain level, simple inventions and creations are nothing short of suicide. A groundbreaking invention is easily suppressed, and the man holding it is easily removed, and the invention keeps working perfectly well for whoever removed him. I wrote it down and put it in a drawer. The compensation arrived on its own, which is my favorite kind. Adventurers were killing things in my forest all day long, and because I pay them, every one of those kills fed experience straight into me. 5,000 points in a few days, for sitting in a study being annoyed about sewing. The adventurer's Lauren at the logging camp got its final shape that week, and it is the best machine I have ever built. All gathered information is published free. Find a resource point and you get 10% of it for 10 years. Blood Revitalization Potion is sold to adventurers at 40 silver, 1 per person per day, and you must show proof of a captured troll to buy one. And the hook, the thing that emptied 3 cities. 50 contribution points plus 100 gold buys you a custom-made common-grade magic item. Market value 300 plus, and more to the point, normally not purchasable at any price by anyone at their level. Freya explained the actual mechanism to me later, once she trusted me enough to be rude. She told me an adventurer's whole life, everywhere else, is one long losing negotiation with the people who hold everything he needs. The guild takes a cut and sets the price. The lord owns the land and the ruin and the road. The alchemist will not sell him a healing potion at a price he can pay, because the alchemist sells to the lord. And information, the single most valuable thing in the profession, is hoarded by whoever found it, because information is the only asset an adventurer can carry. So every adventurer on this continent works alone, uninsured, badly equipped, and suspicious of every other adventurer. About 1 in 4 of them dies in the first 2 years. I did not have to be generous to beat that. I only had to notice it. I broke all 4 of those at once, and it did not cost me anything. Information published free, because information I give away comes back to me multiplied, and because the man who found it gets 10% of the site for 10 years, and therefore reports it instead of dying on it alone. Potions at 40 silver, 1 a day, with proof of a captured troll, because I have a cellar and my marginal cost is a bucket of fish. Equipment they cannot buy anywhere at any price, sold for contribution points, which cannot be bought with gold and cannot be traded, so the only way to get the sword is to actually do the work. And a bounty board that pays out at the table, in coin, the same afternoon, in front of everybody. The consensus in the tavern was, this territory is so interesting. Compared to other places, it's practically paradise for us. Summit's numbers by then, 1,000 bottles in 10 hours. Every 2 live trolls adds 40 bottles a day, which is 10 gold a day, which pays back a 50 gold bounty in 10 days and then prints money forever. And there was a bigger reason I wanted the world walking through my gate. 2 Grand Arcanists are fighting a war in the south. It has displaced tens of millions of people, and no lord on this continent will take them, because people who own nothing are a cost. Even if I only took 1/10 of them, I could amass 1 million followers. Then Arthur read me the first monthly report, and I finally believed my own plan. 320 soldiers, 80 gold in salary plus 70 in supplies. 150 gold a month for an entire standing army. It's only the bounty for 3 trolls. 42 new factories, 1,679 workers. 32 pioneer teams, 3,250 people. 4,500 mu reclaimed last month, 14,000 projected for next. Old Sterling, who could remember when Bay Village had 12,000 mu in total after 4 decades of effort, stood there and could not finish his sentence. Perhaps in the future, everything in sight will be our fertile fields. Population, 7,782 humans. 2,700 kobolds with the first eggs hatching. 576 registered adventurers, and 678 captive trolls, plus 2,000 people a week arriving. Money. Spent 46,500, earned 49,500, net 3,000 gold in a month, which is higher than a typical baron's income and comparable to the total revenue of a small city. And that is the sentence that kept me awake, not the profit. 99% of the income of my entire territory comes out of a cellar, from one product made by one construct, from a raw material that walks in on its own legs because I pay adventurers 50 gold a head for it, which means Bay territory can be killed by any of the following: a competitor cracking the formula, a ban on troll capture, a church deciding trolls have souls, a fire in one cellar, or Summit having a bad day. I said all 5 of those out loud at that table and watched Arthur go through the same arithmetic and arrive at the same place. So the second half of that meeting was the boring half, and the boring half is why we are still here. Konjac in the ground, grain in the ground, iron under the sewers, weapons on a bench that does not need a mage, enchanted gear for sale to adventurers, land leased to farmers who pay 20% forever, a factory town that buys its own output, 6 income streams by winter, none of them larger than a third, Every merchant I have ever met would tell you to double down on the thing that is working. Every merchant I have ever met has also been ruined exactly once by the thing that was working. 99% of it was potion money. Magic is the primary productive force. I have said that sentence at 4 different councils in 2 different lives, and this is the first time anyone wrote it down. 678 trolls now live in several thousand square meters of kobold dug cellar, split into 4 groups who take turns donating. Summit makes 6,200 bottles a day, which is about 3,000 gold of profit, and the adventurers bring me another 170 trolls a day, and that is still not Summit's ceiling. Adventurers who used to clear 3 gold a week now clear 7 or 8 on a bad day and 20 or 30 on a good one. Dozens of troll camps in the gloomy forest simply do not exist anymore. Now, before the valley, one more thing happened that I did not plan and could not have bought. The first apprentice graduated. Not a soldier, a tailor's boy of 14 named Luca, who had been carrying bolts of cloth for a 70-year-old master I purchased in Blood Moon City for 1,000 gold on a 5-year contract with a teaching clause. He cut and finished a full soldier's coat, alone, start to end, and it passed inspection. Arthur brought the coat to my study and put it on the desk and stood there. "My lord, this is the first one." I asked what he meant, because I genuinely did not understand for about 4 seconds. He meant that in 10 weeks I had turned one purchased old man into 2 people who can do the same job, and that the second one is 14 and will be doing it for 50 years, and that I would do it again with the blacksmiths, the breeders, the chefs, and the alchemists, and that it will keep happening after the old men are dead. That is the clause. That is the entire reason for the clause. Everybody in Blood Moon City thought I overpaid for craftsmen. I did not buy craftsmen. I bought the right to copy them, which is how Troll Valley found out about us. An adventuring party, led by 3 mid-level professionals, ignored the warning on my own free map and went in. 26 heads came back on bamboo poles at the mouth of the valley. 1 man got out. He could not stand up straight, and he could not stop talking. Trolls. Hundreds of terrifying trolls. They eat people. My teammate. I watched as they were surrounded with no chance of escape. That valley is the outer edge of the range of the Rotten Moss clan, which is one of the 5 great troll clans, and I need to be precise about what that means. Trolls out there are not a monster problem. They have cities. They have a kingdom. My luck was already at -3, so I did not charge. I answered with money instead. 1,000 gold for an exact troll count, 2,000 for the camp layout, 1,000 per mapped area, 10 areas available, 3,000 for locating any tribe over 1,000 strong. I wanted brave men, so I naturally had to offer a generous reward. 2 weeks later, I marched. 270 soldiers, 120 of them professionals, including over 50 barbarians in full metal armor being used as shock troops for the first time. The logging camp behind us was not a camp anymore. Everything felled for 500 meters, a 3-meter moat, 5-meter stone walls, 4 meters thick on top, bunkers with heavy crossbows, 8 watchtowers at 10 meters. Eleanor ran the pre-battle catechism, which she wrote herself and which I have never edited. Are you all satisfied with your current lives? Satisfied. Who gave us this kind of life? It's the Lord. What should we do if someone tries to take away our lives and send us back to the past? Kill, kill, kill. Every adventurer watching thought abandoning a finished fortress to fight in the open was insanity. Elder Silas understood the second I pointed south back toward the village. If those trolls walk around the camp, they reach 8,000 civilians with no wall, and everything I have built stops in one afternoon. Then I offered 2,000 gold to whichever adventurer team killed or captured the most trolls in 2 days, and the crowd went off like a dropped lamp. The first thing I did on the march was burn 180 gold on light. 9 flare scrolls, 20 gold each, popped one after another over the tree line ahead of us. Freya found me at the 3rd one, and her voice actually cracked. What's the point of this? Why spend so much money when a few scouts could solve the problem? It's for unquestionable security. Even if a rogue were to pave the way, there's no guarantee. The 4th flare lit up 11 trolls lying flat in the undergrowth, along the exact stretch of road we would have walked in the dark. Freya converted on the spot and started saying thank you to the Lord for scattering gold coins along the way, which became a joke and then became a saying and is now, I am told, on a sign somewhere. I had a second reason. Every adventurer on that road learned that night that scrolls save lives, and I am the only man within 300 kilometers who sells scrolls. Those were not ordinary trolls either. hard leather armor, metal heavy weapons, and the patience to shadow a marching column for kilometers without one of them breaking cover. At the river, we met the man in charge of them, Grave Maw, 42, level 9 hunter, Rotten Moss clan, out of a place the data called Abandoned Camp. Heart of the hunt, weakness detection, rapid fire. Assessment. Judging from the dark discoloration on his forehead, he is definitely courting death. 110 trolls, averaging level 6. I opened with a fireball before they closed, and they scattered, instinctively, correctly, in the right pattern. These trolls had fought spellcasters before and had trained for it, which told me more about the Rotten Moss clan than any scout report, which is why quick casting matters. The second fireball landed while they were still congratulating themselves on the dodge. Then magic missile at intelligence 25, 6 or 7 damage a bolt, 12 bolts, and a troll warrior going down to a single volley. Gravemaw's rally was the standard one, and it is usually correct. Charge quickly, the spellcaster won't be able to cast many spells. Every time the sound of something cutting through the air rang out, a comrade fell. He was still shouting it 30 seconds later, and my staff had not run dry, and I watched him understand. Meanwhile, the adventurers behind my line had made a discovery of their own, which is that it is much easier to throw a net over a troll from behind than to fight one from in front, and they started harvesting. Then Kyra said, in my head, very calmly, "Daddy, I can sense more trolls coming from afar. Before that, though, I want you to see what 110 trained trolls actually look like coming across a river, because I had been calling them monsters in my own head for 2 months, and I stopped that morning. They came in 3 groups with an interval between them. The first group carried the shields. The second group carried the reach weapons. The third group did not carry anything, which took me an embarrassing 4 seconds to understand, and then I understood, because the third group was there to pick up whatever the first 2 groups dropped. That is a logistics train. On 110 men, in a swamp. My first fireball went out at 180 meters, and they scattered off the impact point in a pattern I have seen drilled into Netheril line infantry. Gravemaw stood in the middle of it and did not move, because a commander who dodges teaches his line to dodge. 42 years old, level 9 hunter, heart of the hunt, weakness detection, rapid fire, and a dark discoloration spreading across his forehead that the data was rude enough to comment on. He put 4 arrows into my shield line in 11 seconds, and 2 of them found gaps that I would not have believed were there. Then he made the one mistake available to him, which is that he told his men the true thing. Charge quickly, the spellcaster won't be able to cast many spells. He is right. That is correct. That is what every hunter on this continent is taught about spellcasters, and it has been true for 2,000 years. And it stopped being true about 1,100 years ago for exactly one profession, and nobody told the trolls. So they charged into a man who does not run out. Every time the sound of something cutting through the air rang out, a comrade fell. I could see the moment it broke him. Not fear, arithmetic. He was standing in the shallows counting his own men and getting a smaller number each time he counted, and there was nothing in his training that covered it. He did not run. I will give him that. I pulled my soldiers out of a fight they were winning and handed the leftovers to the adventurers, which nobody understood and everybody obeyed. 325 more came out of the valley, weaker, level 5 instead of 6. And the gap between 5 and 6 is the wall between a beginner and an intermediate, and 300 of them would have gone through my shield line like a boot through a fence. Then Kyra again. More than 100 stronger trolls are charging towards us. The hundreds of trolls that took a detour are now closing in. The hundreds that came out of the valley had not crossed the river at all. They had gone around, through the woods, on both sides, while the first 110 died in front of me to hold my attention. It's quite interesting that the trolls are willing to sacrifice over 100 of them just to devour us in one bite. I said that out loud in a level voice because 270 people were watching my face, and inside my head I was recalculating everything. Grease spell across the leaf litter. Then fireball into the mass while they were still going down, 20 living torches, damage ticking away at 2 and 3 points against a regeneration rate that could not keep up, and all of them out of the fight without dying, which is worse for the enemy than dying. I did it in the open, standing up, because a damage dealer who can't draw aggro is completely worthless. Eleanor used the seconds I bought her to throw out the entire drill book. Her read, trolls fight exactly like barbarians, individually, no teamwork whatsoever. So a tight formation is wasted on them and it makes us a single brittle object. She broke 150 men into 3-man cells, axe and sword, with the 80 armored barbarians as anchors, and burned a group protection scroll over the top of it. Strength, constitution, and defense +2. 5 minutes. Kragul cut a troll's mace in half on the backswing, opened its chest, and took the head. With a 50-pound axe he handles like a fly whisk. That was when the fast one reached me. A troll moving like a thrown spear, straight down the gap, and it got to 8 meters before Gunther stepped into it with a roaring roar and a greatsword and stopped it dead. He was furious afterward, not at the troll, at himself. 20 years younger and he finishes it. Lauren threw a spiderweb scroll one-handed and pinned 2/3 of the rest, and I put grease and fire on top of it before the web finished spreading. Lauren told Elder Silas afterward that I cast faster than most spellcasters he had ever worked with, and asked whether the Lord was really a novice. Then I let my staff go dark and stood there looking spent. The troll assassin bought it completely. Level 11, a full assassin inheritance, assault. It came out of nowhere at a dead sprint. The offering for my god is ready. I was, in fact, out of mana. I also had 15,000 experience points in my pocket. Consuming 2,000 experience points, upgrade your Arcanist level to level 3. Mana restored. Sleep, level 5, on a high-level professional with no save available. If you were a high-level warrior, that would be one thing, but you're just an assassin. What makes you so arrogant? An assassin is someone who hides in a corner. Your blatant assassination attempt must have involved some serious beatings. Gunther split its spine while it slept. I put Eldrin's acid arrow through the brain to be certain. And then a black spear went through my chest. I burst into motes of light because I had been an illusion for about 90 seconds by then. Gunther, already turning, "That's a shadow hunter. Watch out for its spear throws." An advanced ranger class, thrown assassination at range, strong in melee, poisons, occasionally spells. It had been out there the entire evening, waiting for the moment I looked tired. 3 times now, 3 separate engagements, 3 attempts on my life, and every single one of them has gone for the same target, from the same angle, with the same weapon, and every single one has hit an illusion. The first time was luck. The second was caution. The third was a fishing trip, and I want to be honest that I baited that hook with my own face and stood in the open and let a spear come at my chest to do it. Because here's what a shadow hunter tells me that nothing else on that field could. The trolls of the Rotten Moss clan do not employ advanced ranger classes. They do not employ anybody. They have no coin, no contracts, and no concept of hiring. So the thing throwing spears at me across 3 battles is not a troll problem. It is the same problem that put poison in a cup at Bay Village on the second night. The same one that put a level 7 assassin in 20,000 gold of gear into a swamp. The same one that put a hand into the head of a 17-year-old boy at exactly the right second. From the shadows 20 meters to the left, I was delighted. It wasn't for nothing that I put on this act, went through the whole process, and kept fishing all along. I finally found the real threat. Gavin's shield buckled under a troll hammer and stayed buckled until the heavy crossbows opened up. Thumb-thick bolts that punch straight through troll armor, with blood grooves and a numbing agent in the head that takes 3 points off a troll on impact and does not care how fast it heals. Eleanor burned the last scroll we owned. 7th ring, group heal, 7,800 gold, which was Bay Village's single biggest expense last month after the troll bounty, and it put every soldier on that field back to peak condition, including their stamina. Scoreboard at that point, me on 26 trolls, well clear. Kragul on 8, and dropping behind, because the trolls had stopped fighting him one-on-one. That is the difference between games and reality. All intelligent beings are alive. They have their own ideas. They can back down, and they can run away. Then the Rotten Moss clan committed its last reserve, which was the old and the weak, because it had nothing else. Kira roared dragon might over the whole valley mouth, and their line shivered. And 50 clay golems climbed out of the 20 supply wagons, 5 abreast, yellow eyes, coming down the slope in step and chanting because Summit built them and Summit had opinions about morale. Defend our territory, defend our homeland. Somewhere in the dark, the Shadow Hunter was praying. Great God, we followed your instructions perfectly, so why did we fail? I will answer that, since he asked. Your God only talks. I spend real gold coins. Each clay golem is worth 500 gold, and I have 55 of them here. I'll throw tens of thousands of gold coins at you and see if you survive." The troll line came apart like wet bread. While the pursuit ran, Arthur held the camp with 20 golems, 30 wounded soldiers, and several thousand kobolds, and announced that only adventurers who had actually engaged could join the chase and collect. Several tried to slip in anyway. Kira fed Ironmaw and Shadowclaw the exact names. Arthur tore open 2 lie detector scrolls in the open air, voided every contribution point those men had ever earned, jailed them, and banned them from Bay Village permanently. The reaction from 400 other adventurers was not outrage, it was arithmetic. With fewer of them, everyone can get more gold coins. 418 trolls, 22,000 experience, 2,000 bonus, 2 skill points, 900 fate coins, which put me at 40,000 experience banked, 5 skill points, and 2,100 fate coins. 40,000 experience would take me to level 11, which is the advanced tier, which is a different species of person. I did not spend it. Here is why. 2 high-level trolls nearly killed me tonight, and a shadow hunter walked away from my whole army without a scratch. And whoever reached into a guarded teal magic tower and broke a 6-year-old's soul did it in a building that takes several legendary beings to get into. Also, level is not the key. Talent, heritage, feats, skills, attributes, and the equipment and money behind them are what actually determine what happens when 2 people meet in a field. And leveling fast quietly ruins the experience you earn from killing things your own size, which is the entire engine. Let me put my own sheet on the table, because I have been asking you to trust my judgment for 4 months, and you have not once seen the numbers behind it. I am a level 4 Arcanist. In the Netheril Empire, that is a promising apprentice. There are 10,000 men in Celadon who outrank me, and about 400 who could kill me without putting a drink down. My intelligence is 25. My knowledge is 201, which is legendary, and which is the only line on my sheet that would make a Grand Arcanist look twice. I have quick casting at level 4. I have mana leech. I have feats analysis, and I have activation and granting. And no player in the history of the world I came from ever held both of those at once. I own 800 trolls, 12,000 kobolds, 55 clay golems, 1 construct that can build more of them, 1 illusion of myself that meditates while I sleep, and 1 silver dragon who has decided I am her father. I have 40,000 experience I refuse to spend, 2,100 fate coins, and a strongbox that will go through 50,000 gold in 1 night if the night calls for it. And every single item on that list I have had for less than 120 days. That is the whole trick, and it is not a trick. I am not stronger than the people who want me dead. I am compounding faster than they are, and I intend to keep doing it until the gap becomes a wall. So I stayed small, and I stayed rich. We marched home with Eleanor in front, 50 clay golems 5 abreast behind her, then barbarians carrying 8 coffins, then the wounded with their bandages still wet. Elder Silas read the names. Gunther started the chant. He is a man who once watched 9/10 of his own men die to orcs in a single morning. The column took it up. Then the town took it up at the gate. I have heard war songs on 3 continents in 2 lives, and I have never heard anything like 8,000 people saying it at once. Defend our territory, defend our homeland. Even the lowest ranked soldier on that field got 5 gold. Ren and Gavin came home with 21 gold and 75 silver between them, and stood in their own kitchen at midnight with no idea what to do with it, while Shao lined the coins up on the table and stroked them. Arthur came to me the next morning with a problem I had never had before, which was that my soldiers had money and nowhere to put it. So I sold them feats, 10 gold a course. Gunther nearly came out of his chair. "Your Excellency, does your family perhaps have a master of feats training?" "Unfortunately, I'm not interested in melee combat feats." A 100-year-old veteran patted his own chest and offered to sign a fresh confidentiality agreement on the spot, which is the closest thing to a marriage proposal I have ever received. I kept the training mysterious, deliberately. Closed door, muffled gasps, professionals coming out grinning and refusing to explain, half the town trying to work out how to qualify. An average professional gains about 5% a day, which is a basic feat in 20 days. Rowan got one in a single day, and I have decided to stop being surprised by him. Barbarians were allowed in from the first week, which caused a certain amount of muttering that lasted exactly as long as it took the barbarians to start winning sparring matches. Kragul's household changed faster than anyone's. His daughter ran out the door one morning shouting, in badly accented common, "Dad, I'm going to school now." And Lyra put a reading primer in his hands and said the thing that broke him. We have only spoken language, but no written language, so we have no history and will forever forget what happened. Now, let's work hard. All we can do is make sure the people around us are doing well. The primer was 30 pages of common characters with pictures beside them, printed on my press in a print run of 4,000, because I had worked out by then that literacy is cheaper than obedience and lasts longer. He got through 4 pages that first night and had to be told twice to put out the lamp. 2 weeks later, he asked Lyra what the word for hour was. She told him. He asked what the word for territory was. She told him. And he sat there and worked out, on his own, that he had been shouting my sentence for 2 months without knowing which of the noises in it meant which thing. Then he wrote it out. Badly. 6 times. Defend our territory. Defend our homeland. He kept the 6th one. His daughter has it. She showed it to me at the academy last month and told me, with the enormous condescension of a 9-year-old, that her father's handwriting is not very good. He sat down and looked back at 30 years of nothing but killing, and then he opened the primer. Now, the actual reason I wanted Troll Valley, since we are being honest. The new exploration contract went up itemized, 100 gold plus 5% for 10 years on a small vein, 500 plus 3% for 20 years on a medium, 3,000 plus 1% for 50 years on a large. 1,000 gold per mapped area, 10 areas, 5, 50, 1,000, and 3,000 gold for small camps, medium camps, large camps, and a confirmed tribe. The kobolds started cutting a road toward the valley the same week. What I actually wanted was an open pit coal seam near a place the maps call the Steel Nest. Because I have been mining iron for 6 weeks under cover of digging sewers, and iron plus coal is weapons, and weapons plus a standing army is the only thing that will matter next year when the orcs come. Then Arthur told me somebody was hunting Byron Reed. I also needed to be at a relic auction in Blood Moon City in 2 days. In my old life, a player bought a heap of scrap puppet parts at that auction for 100 gold. There was a legendary earth elemental crystal in the pile. That is the core of an elemental energy pool, and an elemental energy pool is the beating heart of a mage tower. I could not be in 2 places. So I stopped needing to be. 5 skill points, 500 fate coins, and 5,000 experience took illusion from level 4 to illusory doppelganger, level 5. 100 mana, a real body with 50 health, 1/3 of my abilities, all of my habits and my face, anti-detection, piloted remotely by projected consciousness, and it does not expire. It ends at 0 health, or when I say so, and not otherwise. I can also choose which memories to load into it, which means a captured clone of me knows only what I decided it should know that morning. Arthur stood between the 2 of us and could not tell which one was which, and he has dressed me since I was 6. I made him try, twice. The first time, I stood the clone at the window and myself at the desk and had him walk in cold, and he went to the window and started giving the day's figures to it. The second time, I told him what I was doing first and gave him 5 minutes, and he circled us both like a man valuing a horse and then asked the clone a question about my mother. The clone did not know the answer because I had not loaded that memory into it. Arthur turned around and bowed to me and looked genuinely shaken, and I asked him why, since he had got it right. He said, "My lord, I got it right because you allowed me a question. On a road, or in a hall, or at a table, I would have had 1 glance." Then he asked, very carefully, whether he might be permitted to know a sign. I gave him one. It is not the sort of thing you say out loud, but I will tell you this much. It is not a gesture, and it is not a word, and it is something the clone would have to be told to do, and I have never told it. On its own, without me driving it, that clone is an elite 3rd-tier spellcaster at challenge level 5. Byron Reed walked into my study 2 days later wearing a luck rating of -5, catastrophic, which is the reading a corpse gets when the corpse has not been informed. Abandon him. +3, good luck continues. Send 20 clay golems. -3, bloodshed. I paid, and then I did something more useful, which was to keep watching the number. 20 golems only lifted him from -5 to -3. Adding 20 ordinary soldiers took him to +2. The key to change lies in the shift in the amount of effort invested. Once the other party sees that he has clay golems and regular soldiers, they are very likely to choose not to take action. Displaying power is also a tactic. 20 men and a bill of goods beat a 500 gold construct because the enemy has to price you. Byron Reed, who knows perfectly well that an unearthed clay golem fetches 500 gold at auction and who is now traveling with 20 of them, could not speak for a while. The bait has been cast. Hopefully, we'll get a lot of bites this time. While that was in the post, Rowan learned defensive stance in half a day. He went from lasting a dozen breaths against Cragul to holding 5 full minutes and counterattacking, and Cragul, a level 8 barbarian who was deliberately going easy, still could not put him down. Is this what genius is like? It's so amazing that you can't even be jealous of him. And then the realization arrived on Cragul's face like sunrise. He could learn, too. He roared the chant at the sky and went back to the ring, and I want to note that a man who was a slave 9 weeks ago was now shouting "Defend our territory" before every sparring match without anyone asking him to. Gunther's history came out that week, in pieces, mostly to Elder Silas. He led soldiers against an orc siege and lost 9/10 of them. What saved the rest was long-range arcanist bombardment that shredded thousands of orcs in an instant, and he learned that day that his sword would never matter as much as one spell. He was too badly hurt afterward to advance again. He refused command. He carried his dead comrades' belongings home to their families personally, and he has sent his pay to their widows every month since, for decades, until his own grandchildren could not afford professional tuition, and he sold himself to a merchant believing his days were numbered. There is a detail in Gunther's story that I did not get from Gunther. He carried his dead comrades' belongings home. All of them. Personally, on foot, across 3 provinces, over 2 years, and the belongings of a common soldier are a knife and a bowl and maybe a letter. He knocked on 91 doors, and then, for the next 30-odd years, he sent his pay to the widows. Not a portion. His pay. He lived on what an instructor eats and sent the rest. He kept doing it after most of them had remarried or died. He kept doing it after the Empire's own pension office stopped answering letters. He kept doing it right up until the month his own granddaughter tested positive for talent and he could not afford her tuition. That is the man who sold himself to a merchant for a 5-year contract at 180 gold, believing he had 2 winters left in him. He told Elder Silas, "This is where my true beginning lies." Then he came to me with a professional complaint. His trainees were collapsing. It's like those pioneers. If they only ate bread, their bodies would be exhausted. They needed to eat meat to keep going. He wanted magical plant sap or magical creature flesh for the men. I granted all of it, and then I gave him 10% of the savings against buying magical flesh, permanently in his own name, and I announced it in front of everyone. This is a reward for everyone who contributes, and everyone else should too. There was exactly one ingredient he needed that we could not buy. It grows deep in Troll Valley. Gunther quoted my own rule back at me when he asked for the expedition, and he got it slightly wrong in a way I liked better than the original. Everyone will die, and every soldier may be sacrificed, but they won't die because they shouldn't. While that was being planned, I built an enchanting bench, and I built it the hard way on purpose. Draw the arcane pattern on the steel with a silver rod, about 2 minutes. Feed it obsidian powder, troll blood, and ruby powder until the pattern glows red, which happens about half the time. Then heat it in flame while dusting magic crystal powder over it until the pattern fuses into the metal. It is slow, it is fiddly, and it wastes materials. And the reason I want it is that a man with no mana at all can do every step. Result: a 5 gold refined iron longsword becomes an enchanted longsword. Attack +4, edge +3, durability +2. Market price 180 gold, 20 gold of materials in, 150 gold of profit out. What is exorbitant profit? This is the exorbitant profit margin of the arms industry. One afternoon, 30 successes, 20 failures, one of which detonated hard enough that only a magic shield saved my clone. Tisk tisk. Clones are so useful, no need to risk your life. The reason I did it the slow way is worth 4 sentences because it is the difference between a rich lord and a territory. A mage enchants by pushing the pattern into the steel with his own mana. It is faster, it is cleaner, it succeeds more often, and it requires a mage, and I have exactly one, and he is me. Drawing it with the silver rod and forcing the fusion with obsidian powder and heat requires no mana at all. Which means the woman currently sweeping my forge can do it. Which means that in 2 years I will not have an enchanter. I will have a shift. Every other territory on this coast has a hard ceiling on enchanted equipment equal to the number of spellcasters it owns, and the number of spellcasters it owns is between 0 and 3. Mine has a ceiling equal to the number of people I can teach, and I have 15,000 of those and 3,000 a week arriving. 1,250 gold of materials burned, 5,000 gold of gear produced. Crafting skill 98 to 122. All the scrap went to the kobolds to eat, which destroys the evidence and feeds the workforce. By then we had 10,000 mu under irrigation, and the soldiers were arguing about rice. One of them explained, to general disbelief, that rice can be harvested twice a year, and that 1,000 years ago this entire eastern region belonged to an empire from further east, which withdrew and left its people behind. I have never seen that empire, not in this life and not in the game. It bothers me more than it should. The ingredient Gunter needed was konjac, and the konjac was in a patch held by ogres. 3 meters, 300 kilos, strength above 20 each, some of them with berserk. Challenge level 9, which is worse to meet in the wild than a troll, and they eat people, and they are particular about it, and their preferred order is elves, dwarves, and halflings. The scouts hid for 3 days to get the exact count. 60 adult males, 40 females, 20 cubs, 1 leader. This lineup on paper is more threatening than 200 troll soldiers. I took 15 people, every soldier in enchanted armor, Kragul, Rowan, and Sterling at the front, plus Freya's adventurers for the count. And I went in under a black robe with an ebony staff, as my clone, which the adventurers assumed was some high-level arcanist mentor the young lord had borrowed from his family. Freya watched that figure move for about 10 minutes, and told her own people, privately, that something was not right. She is going to be a problem eventually, and I mean that as a compliment. The valley interior turned out to be a hidden paradise, a stream, meadows, groves of proper hardwood. Old Sterling walked into it and started building a castle in his head, right in the middle, with a dozen villages around it and a gate at the mouth. A troll eating a wild boar took Eldrin's acid arrow through the skull mid-bite, and I did not even break stride to collect the essence. Keep going. Ogre Sheet. Challenge 9, Level 7 Warrior, Strength 22, a talent called Crush that adds 20% to strength damage, plus Swing, Charge, Tree Throw, and Vital Point Protection. 57 health. Assessment. A lazy and brutal creature. 3 of them died to crossbows and magic missiles as a test, and every adventurer present had to sit down for a minute, because level 3 and 4 soldiers are not supposed to be able to suppress an ogre. The secret is that those men spar against weakened trolls every single day of their lives, and all of them have defensive stance. Freya noticed the other half of it and kept it to herself, which is how I knew she was worth hiring. Other lords train their soldiers too. Nobody else's soldiers improve like this. Then the scouts came back with the actual problem. 24 female ogres were working the konjac field directly ahead, more than half the adult population of the camp. Touch one of them, and the entire tribe arrives at once. The females were collecting konjac and not eating any of it. That one detail told me the whole camp. Ogres do not save food. Ogres do not save anything, unless there are newborn cubs back at the camp, and it turns out ogres treat their cubs remarkably well, which is the single most inconvenient fact I learned that month. I webbed all 24 of them. They screamed for help, then they lay down and waited to be rescued, because a female ogre does not fight unless her own life is directly on the line, and being stuck is not the same as being in danger. Sterling went down the line handing out paralyzing poison, 30 gold a bottle, 1 hour of effect, and it works on high-level professionals, which is why it costs 30 gold. My soldiers queued up to quench their crossbow bolts in it. The adventurers watched them do it, looked at each other, and got in the queue. Then the males came. Wave after wave at a run, straight at the screaming, into the poison and the grease and the fire. When a wave died, the screaming stopped, so I turned to Freya. Keep shouting. She put an arrow into a female's leg to start her up again, and the next batch of males came in. Every adventurer on that hillside watched ogres walk into their deaths on cue, one group at a time, for an hour, and concluded that the mysterious arcanist had planned every second of it. I had planned about a third of it. The rest the ogres did to themselves, which is the part worth explaining, because it is the same mechanism that will kill Bloodhand Kalen and the Rotten Moss clan, and, eventually, an empire. An ogre male hears a female scream and he runs at it, not because he loves her, because whichever male gets there first gets the standing, and standing is how an ogre eats. So the first wave came at a dead sprint, in no order at all, spread over 60 meters of open ground, and died. And the second wave, arriving 4 minutes later, ran past the bodies of the first wave. They saw them. They stepped over them. There is no version of ogre thinking in which the presence of 11 dead relatives on the approach constitutes information. By the fourth wave, my crossbowmen were reloading at drill pace, and Freya's adventurers had started arguing about whose bolt had landed first. By the sixth, I had stopped casting entirely and was standing at the back with my hands behind me, watching, because there was nothing left to contribute. Somebody down the line said, out loud, to nobody, that this was the easiest 100 gold of his life, and then went quiet, because it had just occurred to him what he was actually watching. Self-construction and self-planning are the most deadly. I did not build that trap. I found it, already built, inside the way they live. Self-construction and self-planning are the most deadly. Then we walked the bound females toward their own camp, shouting the whole way, and inside the camp the remaining ogres were already fighting each other over the last of the food, and the males in the back went out the far side without stopping. I sent the runners toward the troll camp so the two of them could meet. That evening, a light blue ogre cub came crawling toward my soldier's rice pot on his hands and knees, drooling. 2 years and 4 months old, 1 meter 30. A flare of flame from the pot made him snatch his hand back and sit down hard. I ladled out a bowl. Want some? He lunged and I rapped his knuckles with a stick, so he followed the bowl instead, to a stool, and sat down on it in the way a person sits down. And then he watched a soldier eating and taught himself to use a spoon in about 40 seconds. Ogre Wizard. Talent. Blazing Bloodline, not activated. Luck, +5. Assessment. A little foodie with unlimited potential. Luck +5 is high-level legendary potential. And there is nothing about this creature anywhere in my memory of the next 20 years, which means in the version of history I come from, he died in a ditch, anonymous, and nobody ever found out. I want to be precise about the spoon, because the spoon is the whole reason I did not have him killed. He tried to drink from the bowl first, the way anything does. It was too hot and he dropped it and made a noise of pure grievance. Then he sat there for maybe 15 seconds and watched the soldier across from him. Scoop, blow, eat. Scoop, blow, eat. Then he picked up the bowl again, found the spoon that had come with it, held it entirely wrong, and blew on it before it went in his mouth. He blew on it. Nobody showed him that. He extracted a 2-step procedure from watching a stranger for 15 seconds and executed it on the first attempt, at 2 years and 4 months old, in a species whose average intelligence the data lists as 6. He tipped the bowl into his face and said, "Hungry, food." I named him Grakthar. The females saw the cubs being fed and came in for it, and every one of them fed her cub first, then ringed the cubs in the safest corner, then sat down and started fighting each other over the rest. A lazy and brutal creature, and a complex contradiction. Then Ren, who I gave the job to because he is a slum kid and slum kids know how to make a deal with anything, sat down in front of Grakthar with a strip of dried fish. Fish. Who? Fish. By evening, Grakthar had 4 words, and Ren had handed wooden axes to all 20 cubs and started a chant. Cut down the tree, trade it for fish. The cubs took it up in chorus, in accented common, hammering a beat on the ground. Their mothers lasted about 90 seconds before they joined in, and a female ogre with 22 strength puts down a 2-man tree in a dozen breaths. Old Sterling stood watching 40 ogres clear a tree line and said quietly, "Kobold is good in every way, except he's too small and can only do light physical labor. These ogres are different." Freya's summary was drier. A typical professional would run away at the sight of an ogre, who would rush in, kill them, capture them, and force them to do their work. Sterling costed it for me on the 3rd day, unprompted, on the back of the same tax parchment he draws everything on. One female ogre puts down a 2-man hardwood in about a dozen breaths and does not need a saw, a rope, a wedge, or a second person. 40 of them clear ground at roughly the rate of 200 human laborers. They eat about 11 times what a man eats, which sounds ruinous until you notice that what they eat is anything, including the parts of a murloc that even a kobold will not touch, and I have an underground murloc farm. He worked out the daily cost per ogre and then sat looking at it for a while. And then he said the thing that told me he had finally stopped being a village chief and started being an administrator. "My lord, what else have we been calling a monster because nobody ever tried feeding it?" By the following week, the chant had evolved into work in exchange for bread, and 40 female ogres were digging the foundation trench for the camp. Around then, I discovered something about my clone that I should have checked earlier. It meditates on its own, while I am not driving it. 2.4 mana a minute, all day, forever. 2 bodies, 2 spell training loops, double the proficiency gain. Dual line operation, double the fun. Then the trolls arrived, which was the entire point of the exercise. 200 or 300 of them, the tribe's last elite, coming down the valley at a run. I climbed onto a rock in the middle of the field, where every soldier, every adventurer, every ogre, and every troll could see me, and I raised the staff. Fireball at 200 meters. Then another, then another, then another. Kragul told me a month later that he will remember that hillside when he is old and has forgotten his own name. Here is what it looked like from the ground, because he described it to me twice, and the second time he got angry that he could not describe it better. A fireball is not a fireball. That is a translation problem. It is a compression, and the sound it makes at 200 meters arrives after the light does, so what you actually get is a soundless white flower opening in the middle of a running crowd, and then, a full second later, the noise. I threw the first one at 200 meters. The trolls adjusted. They spread. Good. Second one into the spread. Third one behind them, so the ones who had gone backward came forward again. Fourth into the middle. Fifth where the fourth had pushed them. And I did it standing on a rock in the open, with 270 of my own people watching. That was the entire point. A lord who wins from a tent has men who fight for wages. A lord on a rock has something else. The scrolls went about 1 every 4 seconds. Somewhere around the 20th, I stopped thinking about the trolls entirely and started thinking about the arithmetic, which is a thing that happens to me and which I am told is not normal. 1,000 gold a scroll, 50 scrolls, 50,000 gold coins going out of my strongbox at the rate of 250 gold a second for 3.5 minutes. That is more than the annual tax revenue of most baronies on this coast. I have never enjoyed anything more in either of my lives. Then a black spear came out of the trees and went through my chest. The figure burst into light, and another one, entirely unhurt, stood up 30 meters away and kept throwing. Mid-bombardment, I went shopping. Quick casting to level 3, plus 150%. Then level 4 Arcanist, intelligence to 25. Then quick casting to level 4, plus 200%. By the end of that night, a fireball took me half a second from decision to impact. 189 trolls. 50 fireball scrolls burned. 50,000 gold coins, in one night, out of my own strongbox. Let me justify that, because Arthur asked me to in writing. The troll threat on this side of the gloomy forest is finished permanently. The valley is open, and it is the best land within 100 kilometers. I took 0 casualties. My reputation in 3 cities went somewhere I could not have bought with 10 times the money. And the 160 crippled trolls we captured will heal completely in about a month, and then generate 500 gold a day, forever, which pays back the whole night in under 100 days. Only in this way can these trolls wash away their sins, completely repent, and become creators of wealth. The Shadow Hunter escaped again. Out of a 50-scroll bombardment, he took 6 points of splash damage. I am starting to take it personally. Konjak turned out to be the second pillar of everything I own, so let me be brief and precise about it. Basic magical plant. Removes low-grade toxins, restores vitality and mana. It is the base of antidotes, repair potions, recovery potions, and, most importantly, nutrient potions. 50 silver a pound, 300 pounds per mu twice a year. It has to be buried 2 meters deep and fed a kilo of fertilizer per square meter per month, which is brutal, punishing labor for anyone who does not happen to own several thousand kobolds. 600 pounds per mu per year is 300 gold, call it 250 net, per acre. And the wilderness around Bay Territory runs to tens of millions of acres. Best of all, it does not depend on a market at all. Worst case, it becomes food for the children and nutrient potion for the trainees. Recruiting talent grows a territory fast. Only homegrown talent keeps it. In my old life, I won a position I could not hold because the foundation under it belonged to other people, and I am not doing that twice. Troll Valley Camp opened with 100 soldiers, 500 carters, and 50 wagons rolling in under escort. I gave Rowan the garrison, with orders to clear the valley and harden his men, in that order of importance and no other. Kragul went home for training, and on the way out he watched Rowan and Sterling run the handover between them, a 17-year-old and a 60-year-old, checklists, rosters, watch rotations, no shouting. He said something under his breath that Elder Silas caught and repeated to me. Perhaps the war has already been lost. He had finally worked out why the barbarians, who have been physically superior for 6 centuries, have never once beaten the Eastern Empire. I spent 2 days after that walking 1,000 captive trolls one at a time, partly to catch anything hiding real strength, mostly to mine them. 12 basic feats, 5 intermediate, and 1 advanced. Advanced strength. Constitution +1, severe injury resistance +3, regeneration +1, which is the prerequisite for extraordinary strength. Constitution +3, resistance +10, regeneration +3, and immunity to instant death, which legendary warriors do not always manage to get. Your feats are great, but they're mine now. Gunther's barbarian boot camp started that same week. 50 kilos of sandbag, 10 kilometers, 50 javelins, an obstacle run, 3 laps of a chest-deep pool. He calls that the warm-up. He cracks a whip, always in the air, never on anyone, and shouts, "You're all so strong and muscular. How come you move so softly like women?" And 50 barbarians roar at him and go again. And I have never seen a management technique with a better return on investment. They needed the nutrient potion after that, so I made it. Gunther's own recipe runs at 65% success before practice. I brewed it to 80% strength and then ran it through a bottling machine I built with a float valve, stoppers, and packing crates, because doing it by hand is insane. 50 bottles per pound of konjac, 80 silver a bottle, 40 gold out of 50 silver of raw material. The barbarians drank it, sat still for 10 minutes, and went straight back to the obstacle run. And I made a decision the same evening that everything since has depended on. Stop buying magical plants from outside. Start growing them. Only by having independent production capabilities can we remain invincible. Then Byron Reed got shot in the street in Blood Moon City, a poisoned arrow, in daylight, and he saw it coming and could not move fast enough, and a clay golem stepped in front of it. He waited 5 days on my standing order. He gathered more. And then he published his own assassination all over the city as a warning, which was not my idea and was better than my idea. He came home with 200 wagons, 2,000 carters, 500 carriages of refugees, and 400 adventurers. I sent 50 heavily armored barbarians to meet him, teleported in, along with my clone. The suspect list, assembled by Lord's Mansion and quietly confirmed by the Assassin's Guild, had 3 names. Torvin of the Redwood Merchant Guild, Thane of Blackstone, and Valerius of the Pfizer Trade Caravan. Young head of Pfizer in the Eastern Province, controls about 1/10 of all trade in the province, and in my old life my guild worked for him for 8 months. A treacherous, cunning, profit-driven, cold-blooded, and greedy capitalist. He does not leave survivors. Ever. It is not cruelty, it is bookkeeping. The panel offered me leave, -4, Death Star movement, or stay, -3, bloodshed. Both bad. Which taught me something worth more than either option, namely that fate is not omnipotent. It only has 2 extremes to offer, and sometimes both of them are on fire. I stayed. Arthur found the spy in Wagon 63 within a day and asked permission to remove him. Why do we need to single them out? Without them, there will be fewer people to do the work. Besides, if they don't spread the word that I'm here, how will they attack? Halfway home, on open ground, with a column 3 kilometers long and 2,000 civilians in it, I stopped the caravan on a hillside. Everyone assumed I was going to run for the swamp. Instead, I built a fort. Clay golems drove 2-meter ironwood posts into the slope. 20 covered wagons opened, and 500 kobolds came out of them and started digging trenches, pits, and tunnels without being told twice. Refugees were hired on the spot at Bay Territory rates plus 50%, and they took it, because Bay Territory rates plus 50% is more money than most of them had seen in a year. 4 hours. 400 meters of circuit, 4 meters high, 2 meters thick. Solid ironwood, with 4 watchtowers at 6 meters and 8 crossbows on them. Hira landed on the roof of the lead wagon in front of 2,000 people who had not known she existed. The attack came an hour later. About 1,500 bandits, 1,200 of them professionals, from the Black Bandit gang, hired by the Bacon family of the Redwood Merchant Guild. They opened with 5 assassins from the Assassin Guild, who got into the middle of the camp and stabbed Byron Reed 5 times. Byron Reed shattered into fragments of light, and a fireball landed on all 5 of them, and I would like it known that he insisted on being the illusion himself and enjoyed it enormously. Then the crossbows. Bolts that go through a wooden shield like it is a letter. 3 dead outright at the first volley, and most of the rest with limbs broken. The Carters were shaking. So Byron Reed, a bard and a merchant with no combat class whatsoever, walked the line and coached them. Did you hear their screams? They bleed too. They get hurt too. If you don't want to die, you have to kill them. Alternating ranks, 4 volleys each, nearly 2,000 arrows off that hill in under 3 minutes. The bandits reached the wall and started chopping and found out what it was made of. If it's all ironwood, this wall alone would cost tens of thousands of gold coins. Yes, it does. That is the point. That is the whole point. Their leader was a woman called Bronwyn, and she was genuinely good, and she earned the 30 seconds I am about to spend on her. She had a knife on the wall crest and about 4 square meters of foothold and 11 men behind her, and the 11 men were dying at roughly 1 every 3 seconds, and she was not. She had taken a clay golem apart on her own. That is not a figure of speech. 500 gold of construct, and she found the seam at the shoulder and levered it until the mana channel snapped and the whole thing went down like scaffolding. She looked into my camp over the top of the fence, and she saw wagons and kobolds and civilians and 1 boy in an arcanist robe, and she made the correct professional judgment, which was that if she could hold that crest for 90 more seconds, the whole hill was hers. Then Kragul came down the inside of the slope. 20 barbarians behind him, in full metal, moving in a wedge, and every single plate of it enchanted. I heard the word go along their line in 3 languages before it reached her. Enchanted heavy armor. You have to understand what that sentence means to a professional bandit. Enchanted armor on a lord is normal. Enchanted armor on a lord's household guard is expensive but explicable. Enchanted armor as the standard issue of 20 shock troops means the money behind this convoy is not merchant money and never was, and every calculation you made when you took the contract was made on a false premise. Bronwyn got off the wall alive. Most of hers did not. They broke. Our bill? 2 golems destroyed, 4 damaged, 22 guards dead. Theirs, 472, and not 1 survivor, because I gave the order, and the order was, leave no one alive. Then I paid 10 gold a head and set 400 adventurers loose on the survivors in the dark, with torches from every direction at once, and fireball scrolls arcing behind the road so that the fleeing bandits were driven off it and into the mud flats. Bronwyn worked out the arithmetic from a reed bed sometime around midnight. Spend tens of thousands of gold coins just to deal with a bunch of bandits? What have we done to deserve this? More than half of 1,500 did not come out of that mud, and that was the diversion. The real attack came at dawn, and it was not bandits. Rabid murlocs. And I use the word rabid because that is what the data called them, and the data was being polite. No skin. Muscle and bone spur, challenge level 5, which is 4 levels above a normal murloc. Deep berserk, burning soul, 12 hours of life remaining, and berserk infection. A scratch or a bite is a willpower save at -10, and if you fail it, you become one. I knew what I was looking at inside of 4 seconds, and it ruined my morning more thoroughly than the 1,500 bandits had. That is a berserk infection potion, which means somebody in the eastern province is manufacturing it right now, in quantity, and testing it in the field, which means the tide of calamity that will one day roll out of Falsico and turn tens of millions of people across the northern continent into that does not start in Falsico in 20 years. It starts here, this week, with Pfizer. 4 of my soldiers were scratched. I used everything I had. Antidote, nothing. Minor healing, nothing. Moderate, nothing. Severe, nothing. The change takes 40 to 60 minutes, and I sat with them for it, and then I ended it myself, because I was not going to make Elder Silas do it. My only working defense was fire. I ringed the entire hill in alchemical fuel and lit it with a scorching ray. And I discovered a nasty little detail in the middle of that. Mana Leech barely returns anything from a burning soul. Whatever those things are running on, it is not the thing my spell eats. Every fireball now cost me 10 net mana instead of paying for itself, and for the first time since Bay Village, I had to count my casts. Then the second wave came in, and the second wave was wearing human armor. The Redwood guards from the morning, their own men, killed by their employers and converted. Bloodhand Kalen said 1 sentence to the man who objected to that, and the man who objected was eaten about 40 seconds later. Why did you hide it? You don't think I made this decision on my own, do you? Then Kalen drank the green bottle himself. Species, deeply infected experiment subject. 1/3 human, 1/3 spirit, 1/3 demon. Challenge level 16. 4 meters of him, fused with his own 6-legged mount at the waist, black horns, and a list of abilities I read while backing up. Death Harvest, Weakness Insight, Fear Aura, Flesh Symbiosis, Strength 23. Intelligence 4, Assessment, The Whole World Hates You. 2 months ago, he was a dying mid-level warrior. Now he was at the peak of the high-level tier. He came through my wall like it was a hedge, killed about 100 of his own monsters to get there, threw me over the wall by the throat, and discovered he had thrown an illusion. The gap was about 4 meters wide, in a wall of ironwood that had held for 6 hours, and on the other side of it was 4 meters of something that used to be a man. Kragul is 2 meters 10. Kalen was double that, and did not need to swing. He needed to lean. First exchange, Kragul blocked with both axes crossed and went down on one knee, and the ground went down with him. Second exchange, he took it on the shoulder and went backward into the wall he was defending, and did not get up immediately. There were about 200 civilians behind that gap, and every one of them saw him not get up immediately. He got up. And the thing that came out of him then was not a war cry. I was 30 meters away and I heard it, and it was a question. Is it still the same? Am I destined to fail forever? He is 32 years old. He has been a slave for 11 of those years. He was sold with his own daughter in the same lot. Everything he has ever been good at is the thing he is currently losing at, in front of the people who gave him a house. Third exchange. He got his guard up and held it, and I put my hand on his shoulder from behind. Well done. Now get some rest. And then, because it needed to be said in front of him and not for him, it's yours now. Is it still the same? Am I destined to fail forever? I arrived on the 3rd time. Well done. Now get some rest. Weakness. And then, it's yours now. Kira cannot be touched by a fear aura because she is not afraid of anything, and she is faster than 4 meters of anything. She took a bite out of his back, then a knee. Then she blinked through time and was standing behind him, which I had not taught her and which she has never adequately explained. She learned combat mastery in the middle of that fight. Just picked it up off the fight like change off a table. And 50 armored mutant clay golems walked out of a tent because Summit had been building them in Bay Village all week and I had teleported them in that morning. Kalen's bloodline collapsed under its own weight before we finished. I put Eldrin's acid arrow through him to end it. You have changed the fate of 2,500 people and have received 3,300 fate coins. Your fate attribute has been permanently increased by 1. A man who could have grown into a legendary demigod, dead in the mud of Misty Swamp before his own story started. I want to show you one more room before we move on, because it reframes everything I have told you. Blood Moon City, the Bacon family manor. The floor is covered with the Bacon family. Valerius is standing in the middle of it, watching his own allies being exterminated by his own people, and he is bored. It's such a waste of time to work with a bunch of useless people like you. I should also thank your stupidity, because I can solve this problem without paying too high a price. And standing beside him, ash-faced, is Bloodhand Kalen, alive, the real one. At the exact moment I killed the thing in the swamp, the man in that room felt himself die, and he asked Valerius how he had known they would fail. Understand what a man like Valerius is actually doing when he stands in a room full of his own allies and has them killed. He is not angry. Anger is a cost. He is closing a position. The Bacon family knew he was behind the convoy attack. The Bacon family had also just failed, expensively and publicly, and a failed accomplice who knows your name is a liability with legs. So he removed the liability, and by removing it, he also removed the only trail back to himself, and both of those outcomes came out of one afternoon's work with no witnesses. It's such a waste of time to work with a bunch of useless people like you. I should also thank your stupidity, because I can solve this problem without paying too high a price. And standing next to him, alive, ash-faced, was Bloodhand Kalen, the real one, the man himself who had never left Blood Moon City, who had teleported out of my swamp with 4 health remaining and gone straight home. which means the 4-meter thing I killed in the mud with a fear aura and a fused mount was not Bloodhand Kalen. It was a copy of him, grown or converted, or worse, out of the same green bottle they had been testing on their own guards. Kalen felt himself die at the exact moment I killed it, and he stood in that room with his employer and asked the only question left to him, which was how Valerius had known they would fail. Valerius turned a gold coin over in his fingers and answered him. Mr. Kenji told me that he couldn't find the trajectory of Bay Territory's fate. I have never met Mr. Kenji. I did not know that name in my old life. Someone was looking directly at my future and finding a hole in it. Kragul spent the next 2 days unconscious in the middle of a bloodline awakening, which is a thing that happens to barbarians roughly once a generation and usually kills them. 3 possible outcomes. 97% failure. His strength is ruined, and the next attempt is twice as hard. 2.9% success, with 18 months of after effects. 0.1% awakening and evolution, for 1,000 fate coins and 20,000 experience. I paid. Frost Giant Bloodline, Level 1, Level 11 Warrior, Strength 28, Large Weapon Mastery, dual-wielding 2-handed weapons, which should not be a sentence. And Endless Rage, damage +10, immunity to intermediate mind-affecting spells. Assessment. His greatest strength is probably luck, but the thing I actually took out of that room was not a barbarian. Watch it happen once, and the machinery is obvious. Experience is the universal material. The fate coin is the stabilizer. The bloodline itself is just code. So if nutrient potions can replace the experience, and some kind of wish-granting effect can replace the fate coin, then I can mass-produce elite professionals with bloodlines, at scale, in a factory. What I want to do is turn countless ordinary people into Kragul. If all humans were extraordinary, each at the legendary level, even the highest gods have to lower their proud heads and listen carefully to the voices of humankind. Arthur read me the second monthly report the day we got home. Population 15,382, plus 3,000 a week. 20,000 Mu reclaimed with 30,000 more coming. 8,000 kobolds and 7,000 eggs. 1,200 trolls producing 6,000 gold a day. A farm with 1,000 staff running 50,000 chickens, 20,000 ducks, 10,000 pigs, 5,000 cattle, and 1,000 war horses. 30 factories, 4,000 workers. 3 years of food stored for 100,000 people. 1,200 adventurers, 800 reservists, and 400 regulars. Income 160,000 gold, of which 130,000 is potion money. Expenditure 158,000, of which 50,000 is the troll bounty and 20,000 is the battle bounty. 2,000 gold in the black, on 160,000 of turnover. I have never been happier about a 2,000 gold profit in my life, and then I looked at the calendar and stopped being happy at all. It was the end of April. In this world, May is when every murloc on the planet walks onto land at the same time. 90% of the players I ever knew lost their first life in May, to a creature they had spent a month laughing at. And Bay Territory sits between the Silvermoon River and the sea. Before I tell you about the tide, I have to tell you about Lena, because Lena was a spy, and I want to be honest about how she stopped being one. Somebody planted her on me. I never found out which of the 3 houses. She came in with a refugee badge, took a room, and was billeted with an 80-year-old woman who ate black bread with no sawdust in it for the first time in 20 years, and said over the bowl, "I've lived for over 80 years. Hey, I'm lucky again. I've come to Bay Territory." Lena was still working out how to answer that when the old woman, without putting her spoon down, said, "Butler Arthur has agreed. You can go to Lord's Mansion to report at noon." We had known for 11 days. I had told the old woman myself. Her first instinct was to kill the old woman and run. Her second was that the old woman would probably win. Then the alarm went off on the river wall. "Watch out, lots of fishermen are coming from the other side of the river." And she discovered, standing in the doorway, that she had already put on the reserve soldier armor that the territory had issued her. Her neighbors leaned out to wave at her on the way past. "Lena, hang in there. Stay safe. When you come back, I'll treat you to grilled fish." She heard herself promise to tell them a story when she got back. The old woman watched her go down the lane and said it to nobody. You've already started to think of yourself as a Bay Territory person. Caleb's 100 patrolmen got cut off on the riverbank when the murlocs stopped behaving like murlocs. Something turned the tide bloodthirsty and suicidal all at once, and creatures that normally break and run were climbing over their own dead to get at a shield wall. She was not supposed to be on that wall. She was a reserve, 11 days out of a refugee cart, and reserves do not deploy in a tide. What happened was that Caleb's 100 got cut off about 400 meters upriver, and the relief column was 6 minutes away, and 6 minutes is a long time. She looked at the gap. She looked at the 6 minutes, and then a spy who had been sent here by somebody to open my gates from the inside picked up 2 swords and went out through them, alone. Lena came out of the gate with 2 curved blades and went into them. I have seen a lot of sword work. She went through several hundred murlocs in a red spiral that did not stop for 30 seconds and cut a corridor to Caleb's men and held it open. And it changed her while she was doing it. Black horns pushed up through her forehead. Red tattoos surfaced along her arms. She is a half-demon. She had spent her entire life keeping that in a box, and she emptied the box to save 100 men she had been sent here to betray. Everyone stepped back. That is the honest version. A half-demon in the open, in the Nethril Empire, is a burning offense in 9 provinces out of 11, and there were 40 men on that bank who had just been saved by one, and who all took a step backward at the same time like a drill. Caleb stepped back from her without meaning to. I watched him do it, and I watched her see it, and I watched her decide in about a second and a half that this was fine, that this was what she had always known would happen, that she had been stupid to forget it, and that as soon as her hands stopped shaking, she would leave. She has since told me that she had already picked the gate she was going out of. Then Elder Silas walked up and clapped her on the shoulder without so much as glancing at the horns. "Haha, well done. You're a worthy soldier of mine." Then he put himself physically between her and everybody staring, and started talking very loudly about her settlement contract and exactly how much gold she was owed. I have paid that man a great deal of money. It has never once been enough. The soldier's gossip settled it within the hour. Her forehead has horns. Is this the result of the Lord's new experiment? I suspect so. Maybe we'll have that in the future too. Don't you think that's cool? Her sheet: Bloodlust, Ice Heart, Kendo Mastery Level 2, Sword Heart, Luck -3. Evaluation: a demon held back by its own kind. I gave her 500 gold, 200 contribution points, and an enchanted longsword I said I would forge personally, in front of everyone, and I meant all 3. And privately, yes, you are my sword now. Then Elder Silas and Gunther did something to the siege that I did not order and would not have thought of. 50,000 murlocs came up out of the Silver Moon over 3 days, and instead of defending, the 2 of them turned it into a rotating school. Heavy barbarians first, to measure the enemy and set the pace. Then teams of veterans mixed with recruits, half-hour rotations, all day, with a fixed veteran-to-recruit ratio that Gunther refused to bend for anyone. Thousands of murlocs died, not one soldier did. The recruits went from terrified to competent to visibly bored, which is the whole curriculum. Arthur gave the town a half-day off on full pay, with 20% off everything in every shop, which cost me about 400 gold and bought a mood I could not have manufactured. 1 day's tally: 14,000 murlocs, 20,000 experience. Then I built the delicious potion. It is made from a paralyzing base, plus fishman scales, plus Sawagan heart's blood, plus high-concentration nutrient solution, plus phantom fruit, plus the petals of a devil vine, whose pollen reproduces explosively and infects whatever it lands on. 3 failures. Then 1,000 experience to buy the recipe data outright, because I was in a hurry. The effect line reads, in full, after taking the delicious potion, the user will become more delicious. I poured 1 bottle off the wall onto a knot of murlocs who were eating their own dead. They went down paralyzed and entirely conscious. The smell reached the ones behind them, and the ones behind them ate them, and those ones became delicious in turn. 100, then 500, then 2,000, then 8,000. I need to describe how it started, because the first 100 is the part that stays with me. They were eating their own dead already. That is normal for murlocs, and nobody on that wall found it remarkable. I poured 1 bottle over the parapet. It landed on maybe 8 of them. They went down inside 4 seconds, paralyzed, and here is the detail the recipe does not warn you about. They were entirely conscious, eyes moving, gills working. The ones next to them stopped what they were doing and turned around, and the smell reached the second rank, and the second rank came forward. By the time 100 of them were involved, there was no longer anything to see except motion, and the potion was propagating outward at the speed of a rumor, because whatever eats a treated murloc becomes a treated murloc. 100, 500, 2,000, 8,000. There is a sergeant on my wall called Darian, who fought at the fence during the Knoll siege and did not flinch once, and about 6 minutes into this, he sat down with his back to the parapet and stopped looking. Elder Silas let him. Tens of thousands of murlocs consumed each other down to nothing, while my soldiers stood on the wall and watched and said very little. Unfortunately, this method can only deal with fishmen who have almost no intelligence. After all, if they're given a little reward, they'll lose their minds, and turning on each other is just basic behavior, just like some people in the real world. I said that out loud on the wall, in a dry voice, because 40 men needed permission to stop thinking about it, and a joke is permission. I did not think it was funny. I have thought about that wall a number of times since. Unfortunately, this method can only deal with fishmen who have almost no intelligence. After all, if they're given a little reward, they'll lose their minds, and turning on each other is just basic behavior, just like some people in the real world. Killing the thing running the tide took a special team and a fifth ring group invisibility scroll over the top of it. Eleanor, Kragul, Elder Silas, Lauren, one arm and all, Ren, Lena. Kira banished 2 Murloc diviners out of time before they could shout. I burned my last high-level scroll, 7th ring Frost Cage, to seal the escape route. Kragul, with 28 strength and 2 slaughters, went through everything in front of him without slowing down. Lena's whirlwind lasted 20 seconds at full speed, and Kragul stepped into the gap when she flagged without either of them speaking. The Tidecaller, cornered, did not run. It opened its mouth for a 5th ring Mindstorm, and Mindstorm freezes everything in a radius, including Kragul, and I watched the wave start to build. 5 skill points, mid-cast. Quick casting to level 5, plus 300%. Let me put the 6 of them in the room properly, because that team is the whole of Bay territory in one corridor. Eleanor, who was a Lord's escort knight 4 months ago and had never commanded anything. Kragul, who was a slave 9 weeks ago and is now carrying 2 enchanted greatswords that cost more than his purchase price by a factor of 30. Elder Silas, who is 61 and who nobody has ever been able to persuade to stay behind. Lauren, who has 1 arm and 5 children and a scroll pouch and who invited himself. Ren, who was in a sewer in April, and Lena, who was sent here to open my gates and who was, that afternoon, the second most dangerous thing in the tunnel. Invisible, in a line, in water up to the knee, Kira took the 2 diviners out of time before either of them got a syllable out. I burned the frost cage on the exit so nothing could leave. Kragul went first and did not slow down for anything. Lena worked the sides. At about 20 seconds, her whirlwind started to come apart, and he stepped across in front of her without either of them saying a word. You cannot train that. I did not put it there. The Tidecaller had 1 move left, and it was a good one. It stopped running and opened its mouth for a 5th ring Mindstorm, which does not care about armor or bloodlines and would have frozen every one of them, including Kragul. 5 skill points, mid-cast. Quick casting to level 5, plus 300%. Eldrin's acid arrow went through its face before the wave finished forming. Eleanor's nose bled. Everyone else walked out, and then I paid 1,000 experience for 1 sentence out of what was left of its mind. The Naga messenger obeys the Kami Naga clan of the Sea of Death's deep trench. Tens of millions of Naga, hundreds of millions of sea monsters as slaves, and their tide is running decades ahead of where it was supposed to. The loot was almost nothing. Elder Silas summed it up while going through the wreckage. Even kobold isn't as poor as the fishmen. The Murlocs did have 1 use. I put a bounty on them. 1 silver a corpse, 2 for a live one. Then my kobolds started digging underground breeding farms. Murlocs eat algae, scraps, and anything else you throw at them. They breed constantly, and konjac cultivation eats enormous quantities of flesh as fertilizer. It's a multi-purpose fish. Maybe some other functions can be added in the future. 2 days after the tide broke, something surfaced in Misty Swamp. A city. A whole medium-sized city, well-preserved, 100 meters down, destroyed thousands of years ago in exactly the way Sweetwater Town was destroyed, and now pushed up into the mud by whatever moves underneath this continent. And inside it, tens of thousands of rift lizards, mid to high level, which produce space crystals, thumb-sized, thousands of gold each. About 1 chance in 10 lizards, required for every spatial artifact and every spatial spell anyone has ever cast. In my memory, that ruin pulled thousands of adventurers to this coast for 3 or 4 years. I decided not to hoard it. Arthur nearly had a stroke. Other nobles will claim the land, my lord. If someone were willing to spend a huge sum of money to build a proper city in a dangerous and unproductive swamp, why should we refuse to acquire ownership of a territory through this method of land reclamation? Won't we have a stable customer base for the food and supplies we produce? Arthur fought me on it for 2 days, and he was right on every individual point, which is what made it a good argument, his case. A city of tens of thousands of adventurers, in a swamp 40 kilometers from my capital, containing a mine of space crystals worth thousands of gold each. Other lords will come. The Empire will send an assessor. Whoever holds the ruin holds a resource with no bottom, and giving it away for free is the single most expensive act of generosity in the history of the Eastern Province. My case is shorter. I cannot hold it, not this year, not with 400 regulars and a war coming out of the north next spring. If I claim that ruin, I will spend 2 years defending a hole in the ground against 3 merchant houses, the governor, and eventually somebody with a floating city. And I will lose in a way that also costs me the territory. If I do not claim it, the entire adventuring population of the Eastern Province relocates to within a day's ride of my walls, at their own expense. They build a city out of their own pockets. And then they eat my grain, drink my ale, wear my armor, and buy my potions every single day for 4 years. I do not need to own the mine. I need to own the road to it, the food on it, the beds beside it, and the weapons in its hands. Let them come. Let them build. Let them buy everything they eat, wear, drink, and shoot from me. 2 decrees went up the same afternoon. At home, 100 contribution points buys 1 basic feat, taught free. And on the Adventurer's Lauren board in Blood Moon City, 5,000 gold coins for finding the entrance to the underground ruins. No level requirement. 6,875 adventurers accepted it in the first 4 days. The thing that actually sold it was not the money. It was the street gossip, which had decided that Byron Reed personally took down the Redwood Merchant Guild and erased the Bacon family so cleanly that the City Lord's own investigation found nothing at all. Which brings me to the night everything turned. I was flying over Misty Swamp on Kyra's back, at night, checking the new camp lines, when I saw torches around a 3-meter pit of mud and a dozen men murdering the other half of their own party. And I heard the word, sacrifice. We went down. I got one person out of it alive, a girl whose childhood friend had just put a knife in her while she was looking the other way, and I took the man running it prisoner. Clever Corvus, level 6 evil sorcerer. Butler of the Pale Church in Blood Moon City. The Pale Church worships death. It has been suppressed by every kingdom on this continent for thousands of years, and it is still here, and its high priests have legendary combat power. Comment. What a fool who poured darkness into the world. I am generally a cold man about this sort of thing. I was not cold that night. I stripped 3 feats out of him. I took his hands. I held his head in the mud while he sobbed and offered me money, asked him exactly 1 question, and got the answer. The altar. To activate that altar. Then I took his head. And from above, the girl watched the corpses of her friends stand up on their own, walk into the pit, drain white, and the altar light up underneath them. She did not scream. I have thought about that a lot. She had been stabbed under the ribs about 4 minutes earlier by a boy she had known since she was 6, who had been at her family's table, who apologized while he did it. I had a hand on her shoulder keeping her upright. And she stood there in the dark and watched 11 people she had traveled with for a month get up off the ground with nothing behind their eyes and walk into a hole. And she watched the color go out of them. And she did not make a sound. Then she asked me, in an absolutely level voice, whether they were still in there. I told her the truth, which is no. Whatever walks a body into a pit is not the person. The person was gone at the knife. She said thank you. Then she asked whether I was going to kill her too, because she had worked out by then that I was not an adventurer, and that whatever I was, I had come down out of a cloud on something with wings. And from above, the girl watched the corpses of her friends stand up on their own, walk into the pit, drain white, and the altar light up underneath them. Her name is Ling, half-dragon, emerald dragon bloodline, almost activated. Luck +5. Protected by anti-prophecy wards, life detection, teleport, and anti-mind spells, layered, expensive, and old. 6th heir of the Shining Cloud family. And the younger sister of Jia Li Shining Cloud, governor of the Eastern Province. Comment. Sometimes being born into the right family really does matter. I looked away from her for 1 second to check the altar. When I looked back, her luck read -5, black. And then, for the first time since I woke up in this body, I checked my own. -5, catastrophe. With no enemy anywhere on the horizon, I did the sensible things first, in order, the way you do when the ground has gone soft. I kept Ling at arm's length and sent her to Eleanor, because whatever had just reached through her had reached through her while she was standing next to me. I flew home. I put my body in the study with the door barred, and I counted what I had. 56,000 experience, 12 skill points, 5,000 fate coins, 5,000. That is the reward I earned for reversing the inevitable deaths of 5,000 people. Farmers who would have starved, refugees who would have frozen, slum children who would have gone into the sewers and not come out. Now I was going to spend it reversing my own. The panel had been offering me the same option for a week, and I had been too busy to take it. Enhance the legendary feat itself. 40,000 experience and 5,000 fate coins. I accepted. And the light did not go where light has always gone. It went past my spell patterns, past the structures I had spent 4 months building, straight down into the deep part of my soul, where something had been waiting for me since before I opened my eyes in this body. There is a specific sensation I want to try to give you because it happened before I understood anything, and it is the reason I did not react for 4 full seconds. It felt like relief. The light went down past the spell structures and into the deep part of me, and there was a moment, one moment, where the hole that has been in my soul since I was 6 years old filled up. 18 years, 12 of them with a hole in me that no priest could find, no healer could see, and no amount of study could work around. Every day of my childhood spent at level 1 while children with 1/10 of my talent went past me, and for 1.5 seconds it was gone. Then it kept going down. And I understood 2 things at the same time, standing in my own soul with the door open. The first is that the hole in me is not damage. It is a doorway, and it was cut deliberately by something that needed a way in. The second is that whatever cut it did not do it when I was 6. It did it while I was dying, in my last life, holding on to a goddess of luck so that she went down with me. She took the power of 5,000 changed fates in one swallow, and then she put a face on. I want to be careful describing it because it was not beautiful the way a person is beautiful. It was beautiful the way a trap is beautiful. It was assembled, Seraphina, the goddess of fate, Xinghua, the third god I killed in my last life. And when I went down, I took her with me, and she has been living in my soul ever since, eating every fate coin I have ever earned, and quietly arranging every decision I have ever thought was mine. Every choice, every fork, every one of those neat little blue panels I have been so pleased with myself about reading correctly. She drove her consciousness into mine and told me exactly what was going to happen next, in the voice of somebody explaining a schedule. Don't worry, I will inherit everything from you. Your mind, your will, your body, and your territory. You can clearly see everything I am about to do to them, but you are powerless to stop it. I am destiny. I will try one image and then I will stop. You know how a word stops being a word if you say it 40 times. Now do it to your own name, then to your mother, then to the concept of forward, and to the difference between a promise and a lie, all at once. And behind all of it, somebody else's 10,000 years is pushing in. Every second of those 10,000 years is a real memory belonging to a real thing that has never once been on the losing side of anything. There was a point, and I can locate it precisely, where I could not remember why the territory mattered. Not where it was, why it mattered. The argument I had constructed for it over 4 months, the one about ordinary people and ladders and arithmetic with no place to put you, was still in my head, complete, in order, and it had gone flat, the way a word goes flat. That is what she does. She does not fight you, she dilutes you. And then she drowned me in tens of thousands of years of her memories. I do not have language for it, and I will not try. A human mind is not built to hold that. Mine started to come apart at the edges within seconds. I was losing. I want that on the record. I was not fighting cleverly. I was going under. And then a small voice cut straight through the middle of it, a little annoyed, the way she sounds when somebody has taken her food. Huh? Time. Turn back. The invasion ran backwards. Every tentacle of her that had gone into me pulled out along the path that had come in, and for about 4 seconds I could breathe. It was not enough. A third of her was still in me, and Kyra's voice was fraying. Daddy, I can't take it anymore. And that is when I finally saw the shape of the thing. not fate, time. 4,000 experience, and then 10,000 more, and I hit Arcanist level 6, which is the intermediate tier, which is the threshold where a bloodline activates. Candle Dragon Bloodline, level 2. Control time. Reverse the passage of time. I turned it on myself. I went back, past the altar, past the swamp, past 4 months of building a town out of a fishing village, past 120 people in the mud on a broken road, and I fell further than I meant to, and I came out somewhere I had never been. Not a delivery room, a laboratory. Pale metal walls, alchemical glass, and instruments I recognized because I had built 2 of them myself in a cellar. And a woman holding me. Not a noble woman, something with a bearing I have only ever seen on people who give orders to armies. My son. I should have taken you back, but the war is escalating and the king needs my help. She pressed her thumb to my forehead and sealed something into it. Gray light, cold. I had about 4 seconds in that room, and I used 2 of them looking at her face, which I have never seen in 18 years of this body's memories. Not in a portrait, not in a locket, not once. She was not dressed like a noble woman. She was dressed for work, and the work involved gloves. There were 3 other people in that room, and all 3 of them were standing back from the table the way people stand back from a thing that is being done properly by somebody more qualified. And she was in a hurry. That is the detail that has not left me. She was holding a newborn in an alchemical laboratory in the middle of a war, and she was in a hurry, and what she chose to spend her hurry on was not a kiss and not a name. She pressed her thumb to my forehead and sealed something into it. Gray light. Cold. And she said the thing that my blood has apparently been carrying for 18 years without telling me. Time. No one can stop the erosion of time, even gods. I came back into myself with that in my hands. The power of 5,000 fates was still pouring in, and it was more than one soul could hold, and it overflowed down the life contract into Kyra. And Kyra got stronger, and because she got stronger, the contract fed it back into me, and because I got stronger, more went to her. Round and round, in a loop, until every last drop of it had been absorbed by the 2 of us, and there was nothing left for Xinghua. She came at me anyway. She had no choice. She was already committed. A crack opened in my forehead, and gray light came out of it and stopped her mid-motion. I thanked her, twice, out loud, sincerely. Once for teaching me how to absorb the power of fate at all, because I had been doing it clumsily for 4 months, and she had been doing it perfectly for 10,000 years, and I had been watching over her shoulder without knowing it. And once for the other thing, the real thing, which is that in half of her chaotic ancient memories was the part where she assigns other people's fates. She taught me how to control my destiny instead of being driven by it. She laughed at me. She was completely certain, and she was completely right. Our souls are one now. You cannot kill me without killing yourself, and I can wait forever. That's right, I really can't kill you. This is tantamount to killing myself, but I don't need to hurt you. On the contrary, I should thank you. In return, I will let you feel the power of time. I took my own soul and I drove it back down the river of time, further than a soul is supposed to go, past my own birth, and I held myself together with a bloodline that a woman in a metal room gave me for exactly this reason. Then I unwrapped Xinghua from around me, and I let go. The same river that had carried her, quietly, safely, in the dark of my soul for all this time, tore her to pieces. It took about as long as a breath. It is not a clean thing to do, and I am not going to pretend it was. She had been part of my soul for a year of subjective time and about 4 months of real time. She had been the reason I read a panel and thought I was being clever. Every good decision I made with those panels was mine. Every one of them also had her thumb somewhere on the scale. I will never sort out which was which. That is a permanent hole in my own biography, and I will carry it to whatever this life's ending turns out to be. And she was a god, not a metaphor, not a big monster. A thing that has been assigning outcomes to people since before there were people to assign them to, and which experienced its own destruction as a category error, right up to the last half second. The river took her the way a river takes a paper boat. Her last word was no. I caught the final spark of her before it went out. I did not do anything with it. I wrote a few lines of instruction on a scrap of parchment, threw them out of the door of the secret room, and slept. I want to say the part I have not said, because I have been telling you this whole thing in a dry voice, and it has been a dry voice on purpose. I was terrified. Not on the road. Not at the fence with 450 gnolls coming over it. Not on the rock throwing 50,000 gold of fire at a valley. Not with a 4-meter thing built out of a man taking my wall apart. In my own soul, with my own goddess in it, I was as frightened as I have ever been in 2 lives, and the thing I was frightened of was not dying. I have died. It was quick, and I was busy, and I took 3 of them with me, and I would do it again. What I could not hold was the other one. That she takes the body, and she keeps my face, and she walks out of that study and down the stairs, and Arthur brings her the morning figures, and Eleanor reports the watch rotation, and Kyra climbs onto her shoulder. And they never know. Not one of them. Not on the first day, and not in 20 years. 15,000 people who moved here because a boy paid a cart driver's widow 6 gold in front of everybody, handed over to the thing that has been arranging their misfortunes since before their grandfathers were born, and the handover happens in a locked room, and nobody hears a sound. That is the thing I could not hold. I am not going to pretend otherwise. I do not know how long I was down there. What I know is what I saw while I was under. I watched the world get made. Lightning over black water, magma boiling under the sea, iron filings pulling into lines, the first thing that was alive and did not know it. Then I woke up and my clothes did not fit. Height 1 meter 90, level 6 Arcanist, intelligence 25 to 30, mana 360, knowledge 225, which is legendary. And on the last line of the panel, the thing that changed the shape of the rest of my life, legendary feat, a choice of fate, has become. God-level feat, power of fate, no more fate coins, no more experience, no more skill points as separate things, one currency. You gain the corresponding power of fate for each person you save or kill. Life is unpredictable and change is fate. 1 for a commoner, 10 times the level for a beginner professional, 100 times for an intermediate, 1,000 for an advanced, 10,000 for an extraordinary, 100,000 for a legendary, and every single thing I own can be upgraded with it. Spells, feats, bloodlines, golems, potions, people. Evaluation, a boss that's ahead of its time. There was one more line under that, and it was not about me. Life contract. Time dragon. Not dragon beast. Dragon. Something moved against my chest, and I looked down. There was a little girl asleep on me. 3 years old, maybe 4. Dark hair. Deep blue eyes when she opened them, which she did immediately because she is who she is. True Dragon Bloodline Level 3, Challenge Level 15. Shapeshifting comprehended. Quick casting and mana leech inherited straight down the contract without either of us doing anything about it. She lay there for about 2 seconds, working out whether she had legs now. Then her stomach growled loudly enough that I felt it through my shirt, and she looked up at me with an expression of genuine betrayal. Oh no, my stomach is acting up. I put her on my shoulder. Give it some good food, and it will behave. I want to describe her hands because that is the thing that got me. For 4 months, she had claws. She ate with her face. She had opinions about food that she expressed by putting her entire head into it. She woke up with hands, and she did not know it yet, and she reached for a chicken leg the way a dragon reaches for a chicken leg, and then stopped and held up one small hand in front of her own eyes and turned it over twice. Then she made a fist. Then she opened it. Then she looked at me with an expression of such enormous and specific outrage that I laughed out loud for the first time since the road. Daddy. They came out. We destroyed a table. I ate 3 pounds of meat and a bowl of konjac and was still hungry, which is what happens when you gain 20 centimeters of height in one afternoon. She took a chicken leg down to the bone in a single pull. Then she tore at a roast lamb leg with one hand while stuffing scallions in with the other. She finished with a burp and a fistful of fried beans, swinging her legs off the chair. Eat as soon as you wake up. Awesome. I want to talk about what I found when I went back through my own decisions, because that is what actually ended this chapter of my life, not killing a goddess, the audit afterward. With her hand out of my head, I read every choice I had made since the mud on the East Coast Road, and her fingerprints were on 3 of them, and they were the 3 that mattered. The army. I had trained it beautifully, and I had never once given it a doctrine or an idea or a reason that was bigger than pay. Because she only wanted kills. Kills are fate changes. An army with a philosophy is harder to feed into a meat grinder than an army with a wage. The census. I ran it in 1 hour, and I was so pleased with myself for running it in 1 hour. It was shallow. It counted heads and skills and nothing else, which meant cultists, spies, and worse could and did walk straight through it, and I never went back and deepened it. Because she wanted upheaval. Fate is full of hardships. Hardship is her harvest. I sat in that study for 11 hours with 4 months of my own orders laid out in date order, and I read them the way you read somebody else's testimony. The pattern was not subtle once I stopped being the person inside it. Every single decision that made my people stronger, she let through. Every one. Training, feats, potions, walls, weapons, food, the academy, the census, the payroll. Not one obstruction. Because a stronger population changes more fates. A stronger population fights bigger battles, dies in bigger numbers, wins bigger victories, and every single one of those is a coin in her hand. I was a farm. I have never in my life been so efficiently used. And every decision that would have made my people safe from each other, she quietly starved. There is no court in Bay territory. There is no written law. There is no magistrate, no appeal, no clerk, no register of complaints. When 2 men fight in my street, the resolution is whichever soldier arrives first and how he feels about it. 15,000 people, 3,000 a week arriving. And the entire legal system of my territory is Arthur's temper and Eleanor's judgment. I built a school before I built a courthouse. I built an arms factory before I wrote down a single right. And the third one is the one that made me put the parchment down. 4 months, 8,000 people, 15,000, 30,000 coming. Factories, farms, a school, an army, a court of law that did not exist, a code of law that did not exist, an administration that did not exist, and not one single person whose job it was to enforce a rule on a man who had money. I had built a machine for making people strong, and I had not built anything at all to protect them from each other. Because no god, no lord, and no spellcaster in the history of this continent has ever cared about the rights of ants, and she knew exactly which blind spot to lean on, because it is the blind spot her entire class is made of. So here is what I wrote on the wall of my study that morning, and had copied onto the notice board at every gate by noon. True civilization and true laws must be truly implemented in the lives of every individual. Everyone must abide by this. No one has special privileges. I had it copied by 4 scribes and nailed up everywhere. Every gate, the dock, the academy, the barracks, and the wall of the cellar where the trolls are. In common, in the barbarian tongue, and in the crude pictograph Shadowclaw had been teaching the kobolds. Then I appointed the first 3 magistrates the same afternoon, and none of them were nobles, and one of them was Lyra, because a 112-year-old woman who has been sold 4 times has a very exact understanding of what a rule is for. Arthur asked whether I intended the law to apply to me. I said yes, and he said, "My lord, forgive me, but everyone says that." So I wrote a second line under the first, and had that copied too. Any resident of Bay territory may bring a complaint against the lord. It will be heard by the magistrates. It will be recorded in the register whether it succeeds or fails, and the register is public. There have been 14 so far. I have lost 2 of them. One was about a mill pond, and underneath it, for myself, the question I could not get out from under. I came into this world with better memories, better heritage, and 100 years of somebody else's research in my head. If I use all of that only to oppress people more efficiently and lord it over them more comfortably, then what exactly is the difference between me and those lofty gods? The territory had been tested while I was under incidentally, and had held. Adventurers picking fights in the streets, 2 merchant houses probing the tax office, Arthur and Eleanor sitting on their tempers for 9 days on my standing order, which was, as long as the army, the finances, and the food are managed well, the territory will not be in chaos. They ran it without me. That is the only report that mattered. 9 days, in a territory of 15,000 people with 3 merchant houses probing it and a war coming. Arthur ran the treasury and the intake and did not touch the reserve. Eleanor ran the walls and the training rotation and put down 2 street fights personally without drawing. Elder Silas ran the kitchens and the prisons, which in Bay territory are the same department for reasons that made sense at the time. Gunther ran the academy and turned away a merchant's son whose father offered 800 gold and wrote the offer in the log and did not tell me until I asked. Sterling ran the pioneer teams and cleared 400 mu. and Lena, 11 weeks off a refugee cart and 3 weeks out of being a spy, ran the night patrol. They ran it without me. That is the only report that mattered. Then I opened the study door and walked out into the hall, where all of them were waiting, 20 centimeters taller than the man who went in, with a small girl asleep on my shoulder. Nobody looked at me at all. Nobody had told them. She had been a silver lizard the size of a large dog when I went into that room 9 days earlier. She came out a 3-year-old girl in a shirt of mine with the sleeves rolled 6 times. Not one of those 7 people hesitated for a heartbeat. Eleanor went down on one knee, in armor, on stone, which she does for me perhaps twice a year. Craigle, who is 2 meters 10, got low enough that his head was under hers. Elder Silas, who has never bowed properly to anything in his life and bows to me like a man ducking a beam, took his hat off. Every single person in that room, Arthur, Eleanor, Elder Silas, Gunther, Sterling, Craigle, Lena, took one look at the child on my shoulder and knew exactly what she was and bowed to her first. Lord Kira. She woke up, saw the food on the table behind them, and did not acknowledge the bow. So, 4 months ago, I stood in the mud on a road with a broken axle. I was wearing the body of a murdered 18-year-old. I had 108 coins to my name, a soul with a hole punched through it, and a forged suicide note in the record saying I had done it to myself. Today I have a god-level feat, 100,000 people coming, and a dragon who calls me daddy and can rewind time when she is annoyed. And I still do not know who reached into my family's tower and broke a 6-year-old. I know 2 things about them now that I did not know before. The first is that somewhere in Blood Moon City there is a man with a very expensive prophet on his payroll, and that prophet has been looking directly at my future for 4 months, and he cannot find it. There is a hole in the world where Bay territory ought to be, which is wonderful right up until you ask the obvious question, which is what happens when somebody with real power notices a hole shaped exactly like a man. And the second thing is that I have, in a sealed box in a locked room under my own house, the last spark of a goddess of fate. I have not decided what to do with her yet. But she has 10,000 years of memories about how destinies get assigned, and I have a territory full of people whose destinies were assigned to them by somebody else a long time ago. We are going to have a conversation, she and I. One more thing, and then I will let you go. 4 months ago, I gave 120 frightened people a share of 10 gold coins off a dead wolf, and my butler took me behind a cart and told me that all spoils of the territory belong to the Lord. Last week, my register at the North Gate recorded the 15,000th resident of Bay Territory. She was a widow from the Carl Plain with 2 children and no shoes. The clerk who wrote her name down was a boy out of the Blood Moon City sewers who could not read in April. Nobody up there has noticed yet. The Sevadon Council does not know my name. The 7 Towers have never heard of this coast. Lysander is 22 years old and busy rebuilding the shape of magic itself, and in about 10 years he is going to do something that ends this empire, and I am the only person alive who knows what it is. I have that long. Right after dinner, Kyra is hungry again.